Ryan Mack, welcome to the Development by David podcast. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Thank you for the invite, David.
It's a pleasure. I'm going to give a behind the curtain look into the podcast. Ryan and I just recorded 8 minutes of this podcast, and our microphones were
Yeah,
playing up, and we've just spent the last 45 minutes trying to work on
trying to
each
fix
other's.
it.
Yeah, like two IT
Aye,
technicians that have no skibby about technology.
it was like the Chuckle Brothers. Is it mine? Is it yours? Is it mine? Is it yours?
But we're here now, man. Let's crack on. If I were to ask you who Ryan Mack is today in 2023, how would you bring that to life? You've already had practice at this one.
Yeah. So I'm now a successful currency trader. I've been doing it for about 8 years for big companies. Um, I now have a trading school where we teach people how to trade on a Discord channel. They subscribe. We teach them how to trade. I do live trading for them every day. And then on as a kind of side hobby, I started making videos outdoors. So I only trade a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which gives me Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday to go and do whatever I want. And then I really love the outdoors because I have an army background, which we'll cover later. Um, and I started doing outdoor stuff, going to the jungle, the mountains, volcanoes. And one of my mates was like, "Mate, you should put that on YouTube. People love watching that kind of stuff." I put it on YouTube. Um, Week 1, I had, like, 71 subscribers, and by week 3, I had 150,000 subscribers, and it just exploded. I ended up getting sponsored. I still am sponsored by the North Face, Kawasaki, Insta360 cameras, the whole shebang, and I didn't even mean to be a YouTuber. It was I was like, "Yeah, I'll put that on," and I really thought to myself, I'm gonna put them on here, so when I'm, 70, 80 in a nursing home or whatever, I can just sit and watch all the cool shit that I done when I was a young guy. And it just obviously took off, and I hadn't meant for that to happen.
Had my YouTube channel, this podcast for about 3 years, and I'm only just bypassing 1,000 subscribers. Never mind getting that many in 3 weeks.
Jeez.
That's elite. It just shows you the appetite for people to watch that type of stuff, that kind of extremism,
Yeah,
that kind of action movie kind of content. That's amazing. But I
yeah,
know through your story, from what I know of you so far, life wasn't always work 3 hours a day from Indonesia and
no,
then explore the most beautiful country in the world and document it for
yeah,
hundreds of thousands to see. I know it has been a roller coaster. So, can we take it
yeah,
back to what life was like in Cumbernauld, Scotland?
sure. So growing up, I grew up in Cumbernauld. I grew up in an estate called South Carbrain. So you get Carbrain, North Carbrain, South Carbrain. I mean, growing up, everyone used to always say Carbrain was rough. If you anyone outside of Carbrain used to be like, "Don't go to Carbrain." The kind of tagline was "Carbrainers will steal your trainers." That's that was the tagline for Carbrain. Excuse me, but I mean, you know what it's like when you live there yourself. I never ever found it rough. I don't know if it's because that was my surroundings. I don't know. I was just used to it. Yeah, I had a great childhood. I loved it. The typical council estate guy from the early 90s when you're out with your mates, you're hammering a couple of pieces of wood together, turn it into a ramp, and then flying off the ramp on your mountain bikes and stuff. It was just the typical kind of stuff that we used to love to do.
I love that, mate. I have a very similar upbringing, as you know. I want to talk about your first job as a milk
Yep.
boy. Do you think
Yes.
being a milk boy and being outdoors and having to get up at a certain time every morning kind of instilled this kind of
Mhm.
militarized ethos in you?
Well, that kind of ethos I have to accredit to my mum. My mum is like so I'm 36 right now. My mum's 76, so she had me when she was like 40. But my mum is like old school World War Two baby. She was born like a year after the World War Two ended. My granddad was in the World War, and he was a right hard bastard. Used to hit her with a big army belt and all this, the typical kind of shit from back in the day. I mean, my mum was quite tough on us in that kind of way, but my mum was a grafter. She was a cleaner, but she would literally, break her back to provide for her kids. She would work like 3 to 5 jobs a day. She would 7 days a week. She was an absolute crafter. She always wanted us to have like the best trainers, the best stuff. Go on nice holidays once a year. We used to religiously go on holiday on the 8th of September every year for 2 weeks. She always made sure that we had a good life. And I never ever felt poor or anything like that. We always had plenty of like, good food on the table, silver side. Every Sunday was a roast and all this shit. So I always felt kind of good. It was definitely my mum that instilled the hard work in me 'cause she was a grafter. Well, is a grafter, sorry.
It, it's weird how when kids like us or people that grew up in our surroundings who tend to go on this kind of social mobility journey from one kind of social class to the next,
Mhm.
through improvement in financial security or improvement in life experience or opportunity. A lot of people seem to let go of their working class roots and adopt the
Aye.
kind of tastes and traits and skills of like the middle class. But in fact,
Yeah.
like it just shows you what working class traits really what kind
Instill.
of weight that holds, in terms of discipline, grit, resilience, the ability to bounce back,
Yeah.
the ability to
Yep.
actually provide for others when you're struggling yourself and being able to mask that. Because,
Mhm.
like you said, your mum was breaking her back to provide for you, but you never even noticed that. Like, you never realized it was
No,
quite tough at home.
I never noticed it, mate. Yep, never noticed it.
And I
It's
think
only
that's
now that
such
I'm
a
older, I'm like, "Holy shit," you know, it's only now that I'm older that I've noticed that, like, "Holy shit, she really grafted for us," you know what I mean?
It's so remarkable to see that. I'm the same with my dad. Like, we did have food on the table most nights,
Mhm.
every single night. It wasn't the best of
Yep.
food, but we never went hungry. We always had
Yeah.
clothes on our back, and we would go on
Mhm.
caravan holidays. But we didn't realize
Yep.
that they were taking out payday loans and working 100 hours a week to provide for that.
Yeah.
That's truly remarkable of your mum. What about school?
Yeah,
What
mate.
was school like for you, mate?
School, look, I was just average, you know, I was never dumb or anything. I was never the brightest. When what was it? When I done my exams, I got a 2 in chemistry, 3 in maths, 4 in English, and IT, physics, and French was like 5s. Physics was a 6, the rest of them were 5. So it was just really average, you know, it was nothing special. I was never dumb, I just hated school. I didn't like being at school all day. I'm too active, you know. I was the kid who used to either talk to everybody and put everyone off, or when the teacher's talking to us, I would be looking out the window like, what am I going to do when I'm older? You know what I mean? Like, what kind of job do I want to do and what kind of life do I want to live? I was always a thinker and wanted to get out of the classroom.
Do you think it's just the kind of infrastructure of school didn't really serve you? Like sitting down still, working often in isolation, rarely in groups, studying by yourself, sitting down,
Yep.
being instructed all the time, being told
Hmm.
how to think, how to act, having to ask for permission to go to things like toilet. Do you think
Hmm.
your learning style or the way that you interact with the world is very different to how we're taught at school?
Absolutely. And I never realized this until I got to the army. And the army's training method or teaching method is 100% suits me to a T. So in the army, what my boss, Captain Johnson, he used to always say to me, uh, tell me and I will forget, show me and I will remember. Let me do, and I will understand. And that's it. That is 100% how I learn. If you tell me something, right, this that equals this, I'm gonna forget that in 5 minutes time. You know, if I, so I'm what you could really say is, you know, what I would best learn from. I would best learn watching a YouTube video as opposed to a teacher telling me, you know, or reading it from a book. I hate reading. I do read nowadays, but I mean, I really hate it. I really learn much faster watching something. Practically playing out, you know, in live time.
Awesome, mate. I love to hear how integral your mum was in terms of a female role model in the household. What about your
Mhm.
dad? Did you have a role
Yeah,
model
so
in
my dad
him?
was a yeah, well, yes and no. Not obviously not my dad's fault. So my dad was a financial advisor, very successful. When they broke up when I was around 5, we stayed in, you know, the council estate, and my dad went away and got this big fancy house at the back end of Kindora, you know, big fancy beamer and all that. We never had that stuff, but um, my dad definitely would have been a role model in my life, definitely. But we had that kind of relationship where, you know, it's like I'm actually going through it myself with my son. Um, when you break up, the mum just thinks, "How can I shaft him?" You know, and then stop me from going to see my dad. And even if you ask me, why did you guys break up?" She'll just say, "Oh, he was a bastard," and you go, "Right, that's fair enough." But why was he a bastard? Like, what made you break up? She can't tell you why they broke up. And my dad's like, "Ryan, I just simply left her and it broke her heart, and that was it." He's like, "I never done anything, you know. I never cheated. I never hit her. It was just the way it is, you know." So the negative side of my mum is that, like, she would literally be sitting there like, "Right, you better phone him now and tell him you never want to see him again. Tell him to stop coming to the door." You know, so literally you'd be dying to say to your dad, "Oh, I love you, Dad. Can't wait to see you on Saturday." But your mum would be there like, "Fucking tell him you don't want to see him." And, you know, so you'd be. It was horrific in that sense. Definitely, I definitely didn't look up to her in that sense. It was a nightmare. But
Matt,
the crazy thing is, sorry, on you go.
after you, mate.
Yeah. I was going to say that the crazy and sad thing is, it's literally like my ex missus has bought my mum's fucking guidebook. You know, because my son is now going through, my son is now going through that. He's playing the role that I played as a child, and now I'm playing the role that my dad played when I was a child. It's like fuck, it's like Groundhog Day, you know.
I don't mean to laugh at that, but the
That's
guidebook
fine.
analogy is hilarious. Um, one of my toxic traits is pulling themes that may not actually be themes or may not actually be thematic. But what I'm thinking about when I think about your experience there is you having certain emotions, but being told to mask them and change those
Mm,
emotions. Have
yep.
you normalized that behavior, or did you ever normalize that behavior, especially being in the army? Like perhaps feeling lonely, feeling sad, feeling melancholy, feeling depressed, feeling unhappy, but having to put on a different caricature. Because I can
Do you know
imagine
what?
that early life experience would kind of train you for that.
Aye. Well, do you know what? That is a fantastic question. So, I think these kids, I was so sad that, like, I used to, when I was a little kid, I used to cry some nights, and my mom would be like, "What's wrong with you?" And I would say, "Oh, like, I miss my nana," because my nana had died, you know, but I mean, like, my nana had died like 4 years previously or whatever, and wasn't even a thought in my mind, to be honest. I was so young. It was actually because I missed my dad, but you couldn't say that. Your mum would just destroy you, you know what I mean? So, um, I think just going through that for years as a young kid, and then finally, when I was 13, I don't know if I maybe kind of jumped around too much here. When I was 13, I got to see my dad again one weekend because he came up to see me. And then after that, my mum went mental. And I thought, oh, dad, there's no point coming. This is no worth living like this. And then when I was 15, I went to see him for another 2 weekends in a row. And my mum went nuts. But at that point, I was like, you know what? Fuck this. Why should I have to live my life sad just to make you happy? I was like, this isn't happening anymore. And I literally packed my bags and fucking the second weekend after meeting my dad at 15, I packed my bags and went and stayed with him. Um, and my mum was like, "Well, you've hurt me so much." And see, trying to explain, I was like, "You've literally hurt me from I was 5 years old to I was 15 years old, and you didn't give a shit about that. So why should I now give a shit about me hurting you when all I'm really doing is going to see my dad?" You know. So it was just like that kind of toxicity. Um, and I was
I've
sorry to add to that. I think that, I mean, I don't. I've done loads of frontline fighting in Afghanistan over the period of 3 years, and like I don't have PTSD whatsoever, like not even in the slightest. And here's the thing with me not getting to see my son now, like I've now got it in my mind. I'm like, do you know what? I've lived through this. I know that when you get to 15 and 16, you want to go and see your dad again. And my son and I have already spoke this year, but he then got blocked. We can cover that as well, no problem. He then got blocked from speaking to me. But so now he knows that I do love him and I'm dying to see him. And I've always been sending him birthday and Christmas presents via someone else. And now he knows that. He's like, "Oh, is that how I got my Hugo Boss shoes?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, thanks, Dad." You know? And but his mum found out that we were talking to each other on like FaceTime and stuff and through Facebook, and she blocked us and all that. So, but I've got it in my mind now. Like, I'm totally. I don't like to say this in this way. It's, you have to really understand what I'm trying to say here. I'm fine that I don't see my son. Obviously, I miss him and stuff, but I just know in my mind when it gets to 15, 16, 17, 18, and he gets his own mind, I know we're going to meet again. And I, and in worst case scenario, my military, the military, sorry, really put into me, always think of what is the worst case scenario, and then what are you going to do in that. So the worst case scenario for me is my son gets to 18, 20, whatever, and says, "Dad, I don't ever want to see you again." That's the worst case scenario. So I've already prepared for that since, the last 5, 10 years. I've already prepared if my son ever says that to me. But his mum hasn't prepared for the day when he turns 16 and says, "I'm going to go and see my dad," and she's just going to crumble, because I've seen it happen with my mum. And I don't want to see it. I don't want anything bad to happen to her. I have no ill feelings towards it, even though she's doing this to us now. I'm not a kind of spiteful person. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Because I've lived through it. But yeah, that's kind of the way it is, mate.
I'm really sorry to hear that that's the circumstances, but there is a lesson and there is a highlight in that you have, like you said, prepared yourself for the best and worst case scenarios.
Yep.
That's amazing to hear, and a really good, amazing listener that the lesson, sorry, that the listener can take away.
Hmm.
I'm thinking about my childhood, and I didn't face that circumstance, but I remember being conditioned by my dad and his ways of thinking. What he said was gospel, and
Yeah.
seeing the world through his extended lens. But like you
Hmm.
said, when I became 15 or 16, much like your son, well,
Yep.
you start to interact with more groups of people, you start to understand about your own morality and your own values, and
Yep.
you then have the choice to decide what is right and what's wrong. But before that, you're
Yep.
just so clouded by the judgment of your role models in the house, and whatever they say is
That's right.
always gospel and whatever right
Yep.
is right. Sorry. Um, so I'm and you're on your behalf. I'm looking forward for that day when your son starts to make sense of the world, and
Yep.
starts to have more intel to make those informed decisions. And I'm sure the fact that you're online and accessible, that you'll be able to see what an amazing person that you are, amazing father figure you are, an amazing role model you are, and hopefully interacts with you then.
Yeah, thanks, mate. That when we got in touch, excuse me, and sorry for the listeners if you hear me going every 2 seconds. I do apologise. It's not nervous or anything. I live in Jakarta, and it's the number one most polluted city in the world right now. And everybody in this entire city, out of 20 million people, have got a cough right now. So I do apologise. Um,
That's a poor excuse,
it
mate,
annoy
because Glasgow's
it
number two.
annoys
You're
me.
conditioned for this.
I was laughing with Indonesians actually because we have the air application here, and if you look at Glasgow, the number is at 2, and we're like, oh my god, their emissions are so high, and over here it's at 283, and nobody's bothered. It's like such a different, different side of
What?
the scale. I know.
So, what was life like after school then? You left as a teenager before
Yeah.
completing the complete tenure of school. What happened next?
Yeah, so I was a Christmas leaver, so I'd done my fourth year exams, but I was still 15 after the summer. I should have went back. My birthday's in December, so I was like one of those Christmas leavers. But I never went back. I just went to college and done a course in business management. It was really just to get me out of school, to be honest. I just didn't want to be there, and I did do that for the 6 months. And then after that, at this point, I was living with my dad. Pardon me, and when it got after about 6 months in college, my dad got a financial advisory job over in Portugal. He's like, "You want to come? You want to move to Portugal?" And I was like, "Right." So I moved over to Portugal, and as a 15-year-old, I got a job as working in a Scottish restaurant. It was in Albufeira called the Kilt in Kelt. Just in case anyone has ever been there, Albufeira Strip. You come down to the crossroads. So on the left hand side, big Scottish bar, Kilt and Kelt. And I was
I've been
doing the
there.
pre. I was like, "Oh no way,
I
no
was in
way, mate!" So
Albufeira
I was
last year.
Oh man, I was the little chef in there. Oh, not little chef, the little kind of sous boy. But I mean, look, see, after a month, they were like getting you to bang on steaks, make steak and ale pies, and I mean, they had me making square sausage with my bare hands. And this, it was brilliant. The guys were great. It was graft. I mean, chefing was graft. That gave me a real appreciation for the kitchen. I was in there at like five again, like the milk run. In there at 5 in the morning, I was like mixing kilograms upon kilograms of meat with my hands, putting in all the seasoning, the eggs, and you had to mush it through. Your forearms were like Popeye at the end of it. And then having to use the press to press them into burgers and all this kind of stuff. It was phenomenal. And then I was getting to work at like 6 in the morning, and I was leaving at like 3 in the morning, and I was doing that like 5, 6 days a week. It was pretty intense. Um, you would just like sleep on top of one of the glass freezers at lunchtime just to get your head down quickly before the evening shift came in and all that. It was wild, but yeah, it taught me so much.
Albufeira, from what I remember, I'm guessing it was the same when you were working there. It was like a kind of stag
Right.
do, kind of party central, right? Did
Yeah,
you also
yeah.
work hard, play hard?
Oh, yeah. So well, it was wild. So there was a nightclub there called Kiss. Did you ever go to Kiss?
Yeah, I think it's still called that. Yeah.
Okay, so I used to go to Kiss pretty much after work, and then like it was the kind of culture where you would go into work absolutely wasted. The boss didn't mind because he was still wasted, and it was like everyone just acts sober in the kitchen because no one can see you in the outside. That was it. And we like if one of us was, I mean, I was fine because I was only about 15, 16 at the time, so I didn't really get the hangover stage. I was still, I could drink and everything was fine. Not like nowadays, I have 2 drinks and I'm dying for a week. Um, but yeah, if we would always look after each other. If one guy was like, "Mate, I just can't keep up today," we would always take up the slack, and then vice versa. They would take up the slack for us, if we were too rough. So it was just a great bunch of guys.
So, what brought you back to the UK, or brought you back to, uh,
I
yeah,
wanted,
Scotland?
yeah. Wanted to join the army, mate. I was just dying. I was, partied out, and I remember just sitting down after being partied, and I was just like, "Yeah, this has been fun. It's been great, but I ain't gonna spend the rest of my life here just, becoming a waster, just partying my life away." And so I went to go back and join the army. Now I used to have really bad eyesight, and my eyesight was long sighted, and I was +7 in this one and +7.5 in this one. Which, I mean, if you're long sighted, you're supposed to see things far away. I couldn't see shit anywhere. I was lit. My specs were about that thick, and I'm not even exaggerating. Um, So I had been preparing for ages. I knew since I was about 13, 14, I wanted to go to the army. And when I went to go in at 16, I passed everything. They came back and said, "Your eyesight is unsuitable for regular army service." And I was like, "What?" I went, and it's the infantry as well. I applied for the Argyles, and that's the infantry's got like the worst eyesight, entrance. And I was like, how can I not even get into that? And I applied again a couple of months later, and it says your eyesight remains unsuitable for regular army service. But the weird thing was when I went to my optician, they've got all the regulations, the requirements, and they were like, your eyesight's fine, like you're still a good bit above it. Is like so you it's not that. And they even contacted the army to get a kind of update, and they were like, "Right, you keep knocking this guy back, but he doesn't actually think it." And then again, I got the third letter saying your eyesight remains unsuitable for army service. So, excuse me, my mate Scott, my best mate Scott Watson, was like to me, "Why don't you join the TA?" And I was like, "What?" He went, "Mate, the TA will take you." I said, "How can I join the TA? It's the same requirements as the army. If I join the TA and go to Iraq, it's the same as going to Iraq the fucking the regular, you know." He's like, "Mate, just try and get in." Mate, long story short, if I can even say this now, I went down and joined the TA, Argyll and Southern Highlanders, down in Cumbernauld behind the bus depot, and I got in right away. And I was like, I said to the doctor, "How can I get in? Like, is my eyesight okay?" She's like, "Yeah, it's fine." And I was like, "Why didn't I get in the regs?" And she's like, "I have no idea." So I'd done the Argyll and Southern Highlanders TA for 4 years, and my dad, excuse me, back in the day, joined the Scots Guards, and he hated army life. He only done 6 months and had to get my granny to pay him out. He hated it. So had always said to me, "Wee man, the army's a great place to be if you love it, but it's the worst place to be for 4 years if you hate it." And he kept telling me to join the TA first and see if you like it. And I didn't like being in the TA. I just didn't like it. I wanted to go down there and learn shit. And he would go down on a Tuesday night and he'd be like, you'd be getting a Jack Daniels and Coke behind the bar, playing pool and watching EastEnders. And I'm like, well, I could have been doing this at home, you know, like what am I learning about the army here? It was pretty shit. I had some good times, but didn't feel like the army to me. It just felt like guys are going down to get some free money. It was a little bit shitty, and I didn't like being in the TA. So then what happened was I got a potential call up letter for Iraq, and I was like, what? So I then took that letter in to the recruitment office and I was like, guys, you've sent me 3 letters here saying I can't get in the army because my eyesight's unsuitable, blah blah blah. But you've now called me up and I'm in the TA, and the guy was like, "What the fuck?" The recruitment officer was just like, "I have no." He's like, "Mate, this has never happened to me. I don't know why you're not getting in." So he then put all that forward, and they were like, "Right, we will now accept you in." So I then left the TA. So I didn't get sent to Iraq. I just left the TA so I could hurry up and join the regs. And I thought, right, if I join the regs, I'll get in the TA anyway. Um, sorry, I'll get in Iraq anyway. That was my thought. So I joined the rigs, but I actually then joined the artillery because I saw the job as a forward observer, and I was like, "That looks the bollocks." And so everyone thinks when you say artillery, I thought the same. Obviously, you're just there at the big guns and you don't get in any of the action, but they have a role in the artillery called forward observers, and it's the best job I've ever had. So you're the ones who go out with the infantry. You're involved in all the firefights, but then when the boss or the sergeant turns around and says like, "We need air support or we need heavy fire," you're then the one that's in charge. You stop, obviously, firing with your rifle, and you then obviously find the enemy locations using a compass, laser range finders for distance, blah blah blah, and you then call in the artillery. So we can call in mortars, light gun, heavy gun, GMLRS. You know, that's like the rockets you see coming out the back of a truck. It looks like a big rectangle, and the rockets are like, you know what I mean, flying out. That's called MGMLRS. We could do Apache. It was just a brilliant job. Just so when the bombs come in, it's our job to look through the binoculars, and there's little graticles in it. And for every one graticle of space at 1 kilometer, that equals 100 meters on the ground. So you would then say, right, you would know, all right, I'm, 500 meters away. So you know that that's 200 meters in a grat. And you would say, like, left 200, up 100, and you would bring the bombs on. And then once you're on target, you would say, like, 120 rounds, fire for effect. And then all 6 guns would just fire on that position. It was fucking phenomenal. I loved it.
I know we'll speak about your current trading career shortly,
Yep.
but I already see a parallel between your role as a forward observer and
Mhm.
forex trading or trading. You were talking
Yep.
about these graticles, these kind of units of measurement that signaled another unit of measurement or signaled distance or range or whatever else in between it. That seems like a skill that you've learnt through the army that you've transgressed onto trading. Because I know, like, for trading, it's like pattern recognitions. You look for
Yep.
signs and signals of what's to come next. Do you think there
Yep.
is a kind of correlation between the two?
We're not with the whole gratical thing, but I'll tell you what there is definitely a correlation with, and how I've ended up becoming a successful trader is discipline and just waiting. You have to be in trading. You have to be a sniper and not a machine gunner. People just think the more trades you place, the more money you're going to make, and it is absolutely not the case. The less trades you make, but you pick good quality trades, you will then definitely make money. But if you sometimes just sit here for a week and I'm like, I don't like anything. And even when I do my live, so I do 2 live tradings every single day, so all my students can watch me trade and they can copy my trade at the exact same time as I do it live on screen. Um, and I'll say to them, I'll say, look, see if you are looking at the charts and you're like, is that an entry? Well, it's rejecting here, but does it look like an entry? Is it not? I say that is not a trade. When you know it's an entry, you can see it right away, like fucking hell, there it is. You don't even have to think about it. Is this my entry? You can see it a mile away if you just have a couple of strict parameters based on candle patterns and areas of rejection and blah blah blah. And it's definitely helped with that. The patience side, absolutely.
I like that. The ability to self-regulate and self-control, because
Yep,
in the army, as a forward observer, you make one wrong move and you've completely ruined the mission or the
yep,
conquest or the aim or the target. Whereas
yep,
what you could do is just throw or deploy hundreds of rockets or uh, large shells
yep.
and miss and give your position away and ruin the entire mission. I love how there's synergies between the
Yep.
two.
And you can also, with the forward observer stuff, I mean, it's not just about calling in the bombs, which is actually very easy. You then have, if you're with a platoon here, there may be a platoon up, what we call left flanking, going around and peeling round to the left and left flanking the enemy. So if you're calling in rounds, you have to know where your friendly forces are at the other side. And you also need to know if there's any aircraft in the air so that you don't, essentially knock an Apache out there with one of your own bombs. So there's while you're in the middle of a firefight and there's rounds coming in, you can hear the tracers zipping by your head, RPGs blowing up beside you. At the same time, you're having to deconflict. Is there any air? Is there anything in the air? Do I have to move the jets to the left? Which I wouldn't do that, but I would deconflict it with someone who's called a JTAC. I would give him the information, guys. I'm going to bring in the guns from this area here. Give him the bearing, altitude of XYZ, and he would then have to coordinate the jets to the left of that or the right of that, and give them an area where not to fly in, and then you need to plot your friendly forces on the map, and you have to remember the infantry who are, let's just say in this example, doing the left flank, they're also advancing. So you need to know where their position is. And there you have to keep asking them, what is your position? Because they're so engrossed in a firefight, they're obviously going to forget, they're not going to remember 100% of the time to update you with their position. So you have to really be on the ball, or you could end up killing your own guys very easily. Very easily. So that brings an element of stress, which you have to remain calm, which definitely does help me with trading.
Holy shit! Can we speak about one of your most extreme days in Iraq? What would a day in the life look like? Uh,
Mate, Iraq, I never done Iraq with the army. So when I done Iraq, that was when I had already got out of the army and I was doing what's called,
oh, okay.
well, there's loads of names for it: close protection, PMC, private military contractor, bodyguard. You would most commonly know it as. I only done that.
So,
I never done a tour of duty of Iraq. It was only I done 2 frontline tours of Afghanistan.
okay. So, what would be one of the most extreme days that you would have in Afghanistan in that case? My bad.
Yeah, I know right away. So we were in a firefight one day for 33 hours. It just continued for 33 hours. And like there was people
What?
doing like runs back to bring ammunition, bring it back on like a quad bike and all that. And it was just absolutely wild. And we were in this ditch up to our nipples in water. It was pitch black at night. We ran out of water, ran out of food, we ran out of ammunition. And it was coming over the ICOM that we were going to get surrounded. And what had happened is because we had ran out of we literally had no ammunition left. We were fucked. Um, and because we had no ammunition left, we obviously weren't firing back at the Taliban. So the Taliban kept firing, and then when they heard that there was no return fire, they thought that we had bugged out. We call it bugged out when you basically fuck off and retreat. They thought we had bugged out, so they then stopped firing. And so then we just then waded through the river all the way back. We never came out the river. We just stayed in the river, so we had the protection of the bund line all the way down to get back out at night time. But yeah, that was probably the most extreme day.
Holy shit! What was going
Yeah.
through your mind during those 33 hours? How could you remain calm knowing that your life was almost ended imminently?
Well, do you know what? I'm sure everyone who's been in the army will tell you the same thing. See, your first and second contact, maybe you shit your pants because that's the first time you've ever been in a two-way range. Before that, it's just in a range that doesn't fire back at you. But it sounds ridiculous. I'm sure other infantry lads or whoever's been in the front line will say the same thing. You don't actually realise how dangerous it is at the time. You don't think, "Oh fuck, I can die in a minute." You're just so wrapped up in the moment and getting the rounds down and is everyone all right? Have you got ammo? Is there any casualties? And fucking where are we going next? You're just so wrapped up in all that. And it's weird after about it's definitely 2 to 3 weeks, it kind of becomes the norm, you know. I remember one night being up on the roof part behind the sandbags at the checkpoint we were at. It's called PB Jaker, and I was on the satellite phone to my sister, and the next minute it was just, and it was the Taliban were attacking our checkpoint, and I was like, "Oh fuck's sake, Ali, I need to go!" And then just as I was going, they'd fired a Chinese rocket that exploded in our compound. It didn't hit any of the guys. Our compound had like a helipad part, and in the living quarters with tents and stuff. And it had hit the helipad part, but it obviously left off a mega explosion. And my sister was like, "What the fuck is that?" And I was like, "Oh, don't worry, I need to go." She's like, "Don't fucking worry." And it was just like total chaos because right below me, well, I was on the roof, and right below that was the Sanger, and there was a couple of Gurkhas in the Sanger with like fucking 50 caliber, like just like dum 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 dum, getting the fucking rounds down. And obviously, my sister can hear all this, and she was flapping. But I remember, like, I was just absolutely fine. I'm not trying to sound like a fucking hero because I'm not, but I know that all frontline guys know exactly what I'm talking about here without trying to sound as I'm fucking SAS or some shit. It just becomes the norm, is what I'm trying to say, and you don't really think about your life being in danger.
That's that's hilarious, me. The fact that you were just like, Ali, I need to go, as if someone was at the front door.
Aye,
Like, when you're on
yeah,
a
yeah.
call and someone, the postman's at the door or something like that. I need
I
to
know,
go.
I know.
But instead of a postman, it's a fucking Taliban.
It was mental.
It's crazy how you just become so hyper normalized to violence and to conflict and to emergency. It's crazy.
Aye.
Um, do you remember some of the specific lowlights of being in Afghanistan?
I mean, I fucking loved it, mate. I mean, there was obviously shit days. So I was on what's called Herrick 10, 2009 summer, and that was apparently. I'm not saying this. This is what I've been reading online. It was the bloodiest conflict that the British Army have been involved in since Second World War, and that's the tour that the Lieutenant Colonel, the commanding officer of the Welsh Guards, was killed. And he was blown up 150 meters from our checkpoint. I was attached to the Welsh Guards at this point, the Jam Boys, 1st Battalion Welsh Guards, and he was coming up to see us at our checkpoint in like a convoy of Vikings, and they drove over an IED. It was literally 150 meters, so it's the same road that we used to patrol down all the time. So it must have been the weight of his vehicle that set it off because we used to walk up and down that all the time. Um, and he got blown up and killed. So yeah, that's probably one of the most standout ones. Um,
Did you witness
yeah,
that happening, or did you just did you just hear the bang and understand that
Mate, I just heard the
someone's life
bang,
had been
mate.
lost?
Yeah, I just heard the bang. Aye. So when I was coming home on my R&R, they come and pick you up. Excuse me. They come and pick you up in these vehicles called Mastiffs, and I was going home in R&R. They were taking me back into Camp Bastion from the Shalaman Canal, checkpoint 9. And as we're going back, as I got in the vehicle, the back tire was like you get obviously two back tires on each side. Um, and the outside back tire was all bent and mangled to fuck, and the vehicle was still driving using the other tires. And I was like, "What the fuck?" And the guy's like, "This way, here." He's like, "Yeah, mate, we just fucking hit an IED on the way in." I was like, "Fucking hell!" So we got in that vehicle, and we didn't get hit with an IED on the way back out. But yeah, it's fucking mental.
During your tours in Afghanistan, I'm sure, or I'm guessing, you interacted with the Afghani communities and the civilians. What were they like?
Yeah,
What was their kind of perception of what was going on around them?
yeah. So you got a mixed bunch. You got a mix of Afghanis that were very friendly and liked us. They were glad that we were there. And then you get the ones that are kind of more sided with the Taliban and think we're all pricks. So it was very varied. You had a thing where they would make this bread. We used to call it toenail bread because they used to like literally put this dough on the ground and then stamp on it with their feet to flatten it out and like on the mud, and then they would bang it in like this kind of oven on the side of the wall. Excuse me, and then we would eat that. But you knew if you ate that, you were going to get the shits, like you were fucked. So but if they invited you in for tea and bread and stuff, it was kind of impolite not to eat it. So we would all take a turn, like, it's your turn this week, mate, to get the fucking shits, you know. So, so it would be someone's turn for toenail bread. We would do that. Um, and the one people when I was talking to the interpreter, he was saying, "Oh, we were having a conversation with this particular guy one time." Um, and he was saying that they actually like the British soldiers more than the American soldiers. And when we asked why was that, it was down to things like etiquette. It turned out. So when American soldiers rocked up, they would be wearing gloves, wearing sunglasses. You know, they would kick in someone's door, supposed to chap it and say hi. Could we just come in and have a look around? Whereas we used to interact with the locals. If we were shaking someone's hand, we would always take our sunglasses off. We would always take our gloves off, shake, you know, so it's skin to skin. We would always look them in the eye when we're speaking. So it was small things like that with etiquette. In Muslim countries, after you shake someone's hand, you put your hand in your kind of left breast next to your heart, you know, salam alaikum, and then you would do this. We used to do all that kind of stuff. We used to call it hearts and minds, and it really did work.
On the flip,
With
on
me
the
with the
flip to that,
locals, sorry, yep.
after you, mate.
No, I was just going to say. So, pardon me. I've always been someone who is just very good with languages. I don't know where it's came from, but I've always been able to pick up languages. When I lived in Portugal, I could speak very good Portuguese, and when I went to Afghanistan, I used to learn 10 words a night via the interpreter. And I used to be able to speak to the locals in Pashto. They speak Farsi and Dari, but the Taliban, because the Taliban are actually Pakistani, they're not Afghanis, they're Pakistani, so they speak Pashto. So I could actually speak Pashto at a very good level.
That's incredible, mate. That's incredible. What about the civilians that were more sided with the Taliban? What were your
Mhm.
interactions with them like?
So it was just things like if we were driving in the vehicles. I remember we were going through the bazaar. Bazaar just means market, and we were driving through the market one time, and I was doing top cover with the GPMG. And as we were going through, there was this wee chogi guy, and he had like a brick, and as he saw us drive by, he kind of pretended to throw the brick, like. But and we are like, "Oi." So we kind of have a little bit of a laugh with him and stuff, you know. Like we'd point the pistol at him, and he'd go up with a stone and all this kind of shit. So if we came across a dick like that, what we used to do is like if we were close to him, we would snap a glow stick and be like, ah, and we'd throw the glow stick at him, and he would like catch it, thinking it was roasting hot, and he would shit himself, and then he would realize it was the glow stick, and then he would laugh and we would laugh, you know. So we kind of broke the ice that way. We weren't trying to be mean to them, but we're like get a little bit of fuck off at the same time, but trying to make them know at the same time, look, we're actually all right. We're not here to fucking harm you, you know. If you're fine with us, we're fine with you, you know. So it was a little bit of that. I loved it. I thought the locals were great, and we had lunch with the Taliban one time. They came into our compound, and obviously they had the meeting with the boss. I didn't do any of the talking. It was all the officer stuff and all that. But we were still in for the lunch, and then at the end of it, the boss was like, "Has anyone got a fucking dessert?" And my auntie, I'm sure my auntie Jan, sent me a Jamaica cake in one of my parcels. So I was like, "Boss, I've got a Jamaica cake." He's like, "Go fucking get it." So I was like running up to my tent where I had an ammo tin with like all my little chocolates and iron brew and shit people had sent me from back home. And I ran down to this tent and I was like sharing this Jamaica cake with the Taliban. And it was like what we call in the army a condor moment where like everything just pauses and you stop and just think, what the fuck? And I remember thinking, what the fuck? Here's like a guy from Cumbernauld in the middle of Afghanistan sharing Jamaica cake with the Taliban. Like, this is fucked up. And so it was just like, this is such a crazy experience. So I remember that. That was
I'm,
quite a pivotal point. That was quite cool.
that is mental. That's like seeing like
Aye.
like a member of ISIS, a member of ISIS, like tucking into a caramel wafer and an iron brew. You know, that's mental.
I know. That was it, man. It
That's
was brilliant.
mental.
And they're all like,
Taliban.
good, good, very good, very good. You know, it's funny as fuck.
That's crazy. I can't believe that story. I remember the Taliban eating Jamaica cake that your auntie sent to
Aye.
you. That's brilliant. So when did you decide to leave the army? At what point?
Yeah, mate. So, excuse me. When I joined, mate, I was a 25-year man all day long. And anyone that knew me in the army would always say, oh, Mac's mad for it, right? I was always a guy who was mad for it because I fucking loved the army. So I think I've got a little thing there. 2 seconds. There you go. Sorry. So I love the army. And I was definitely a 25-year man. And after like my 5th year in the regs, I was just like, fuck this index. The army became shit. They were putting you onto this turbo shit pension. that your pension that they were forcing you to sign, which now everyone who signed it is now getting their old pension back because we were all forced to sign it. Like, with the sergeant majors, yeah, you've got no choice, get it fucking signed. And now it's like, well, we did it. You've always got a choice with your pension. You don't have to sign it. So they're all getting their money back now, finally. um, but what was it? What happened there? Aye, and then it just got all this pink and fluffy way, mate. I preferred it the old school way there. If you fucked up, you would get taken round the back and get a dig and be like, "Don't fucking do it again." You'd be like, "Yeah, all right, no worries." But it turned all pink and fluffy to the point where it was all very PC and um, yeah, it was like so. Back when I first joined, someone could come into a class and be like, "Right, guys, today we're gonna crack on with fucking NBC or whatever." And it's like nowadays, if you get charged, like fined in the army, it's called an agai. An agai is a military charge. You get agaied for being like, "Right, guys, today we're gonna." You get agaied for saying "guys," and it's not in case there's a woman there who feels offended. Maybe you have a female medic. It's not for that. It's in case there's a man there who doesn't identify as being a man, and you've offended him. I was just like, fuck this. This is not the army that I want to be a part of anymore. And for anyone who's watching who may be gay or lesbian, I honestly couldn't give a shit. Um, we had gay guys in the battery in the regiment, and we were always having a good laugh. Nobody cared about that. It's just that the army just got so pink and fluffy and bullshit, and it was like, there's no need for that in the army when you are in a trench fucking fixing bayonets. You don't need to be like, oh, who's offended by saying guys? It's fucking ridiculous. um, your pay was getting shit, so your pay was going to be capped at whatever you were at. They were literally saying you aren't getting another pay rise, and unless you obviously moved up in rank. But it used to be that you would get a pay rise, or the whole army would get two pay rises a year. When I first joined, you would get a pay rise at the new tax year, and then each individual person would get a pay rise on the month that they first joined the army. So mine would have been August and then April, and then that stopped after like 2 years. So you weren't getting your pay rises until you moved up in rank, and it used to be like a full screw would get 41 grand. They were bringing that down to like 27 grand, and I was like, fuck that. It was just it was just totally shit. They just made me not want to be there anymore. It was horrible.
So, what was the natural progression to becoming a bodyguard in Iraq?
Mm, right. So, excuse me. So everyone and their dog who's leaving the army goes into what's called close protection. Everyone wants to do it, and you need to pay when you get out. You have to pay like a kind of 5-6 grand worth of courses. You need to go and do a firearms course, a medics course, blah blah blah, and it costs a lot of money. And you're not always guaranteed a job because you've got everybody's fighting for it. And if they've got a CV from a guy like me who was an ex-Royal Royal Artillery Fall Observer, and then you've got a guy from one para or the Royal Marines applying for the same job, they're clearly going to pick the guy from fucking one para of the Royal Marines. You know what I mean? That's just the way the cookie crumbles. Um, so I wasn't going to do it. And on my second tour of Afghanistan, when I knew I was coming back and I was going to sign off, um, when I was in Camp Bastion, before it was coming home, you get internet in Camp Bastion and you get like 30 minutes privilege on, Facebook or call your family, whatever. So I jumped on, and it was an old family friend called Arnie Campbell. Back in the day, he was TA, but he was Paras TA, the Parachute Regiment TA, and then SAS TA. And then because of his background, he was a boss. He was a project team leader for, I can't mind the name of the company now. I'm sorry, but he was a project team leader anyway for this private security firm over in Afghan, and he used to babysit me when I was like 5 years old because my sister Dawn was his girlfriend's best mate. So if they were going out to the pub or what, a girls' night out, and my sister had me, he would look after me until they got back. So he was also much older than me, and we got in touch randomly on Facebook. He's like, "Wee man, is that you?" I was like, "Fucking hell, Arnie." His name's Arnie Campbell. Hadn't seen him for years, and we got talking. And what are you doing now? Blah blah blah. He's like, I'm gonna get out. He said, "What are you gonna do?" Says, "Don't know." He said, "Do you want to do CP, close protection?" And I was like, "Oh, mate, you need to fucking spend 6 grand. Everyone and their dog's doing it, and you're not guaranteed a job at the end of it. So I don't really know if I'm willing to risk spending all that money and doing it." And he's like, "Fuck that." He's like, "I'll give you a job." He's like, "You want a job? I'll give you a fucking job right now." I was like, "No way." He's like, "Legit, mate." So when I finally went home, excuse me, I had just done 6 months in Afghan. I was in my month R&R. And then when I came back after that month R&R, pardon me, what was it again? Yeah, so when you sign off from the army, you have to give a year's notice, right? But that was at the point, it was 2012, and the army were you could apply for redundancy and get out early. If you applied for redundancy, you still had to wait like a year. You had to get approved first and blah blah blah. So it was going to take like a really long process. I wouldn't have got out for about another year or maybe even more if I'd done the redundancy route. However, if you had signed off and you got a letter from your new employer saying that you have a guaranteed offer of employment, then they would get you out. As soon as you decitted, you would be out. I can see you later. So I was like, Arnie, can you please send this letter into the RCMO, the regimental, what is that? Can't remember. RCMO, can't even remember what it stands for. Oh, Career Management Office. So they sent that into him, a guy called Andy Fuller. He's on my Facebook. He's a cracking guy. And he was like, I can see you later, Mac. So I just debombed, handed my kit in, and then, excuse me, that was on the Monday when I got back. I was based in Northern Ireland, Lisbon, Thiepval Barracks. I got back on the Monday, and then on the Wednesday, I was flying straight back out to Afghan. Now, that was a fucker. Not that I cared, but I had a missus at the time and a little boy, and I had just got back from a 6 months tour. And when the American company mailed me, they said it was six, 6 and 1. So I assumed it was 6 weeks on, 1 week off. And I thought, that's a bit weird that you get 1 week off and have to fly back for Afghan. I was like, yeah, all right, it's only 6 weeks on. Sometimes you do 2 months on, 1 month off. When I landed there, I said to my boss, how come our return flights and like, I got there in like the October or something. And I was like, how come our return flights in like March? And he's like, 6 and 1. And I was like, yeah, but shouldn't I have one in like November? And he's like, 6 months is March. And I was like, 6 fucking months. So it turned out I mean, I was so stupid I didn't confirm it first, but so sorry guys, the pollution here is bloody terrible. It was 6 months on, 1 month off. So I then had to call my missus at home and like, you're gonna fucking kill me. And she's like, what is it? Because she hated all this shit. She hated the army and hated all this shit anyway. She needed someone who's like with her 24/7, pampering her and shit. Um, and yeah, so it turned out to be 6 months on, 1 month off, and I was like, fuck, I'm here for another 6 months. Yeah. I loved it, man. It was fucking brilliant. I learnt salsa and everything. So me and I was in the gym one day, and I was on this American base called Bagram Air Base, right? And it was all Americans and French and blah blah blah. But there's like so many South American soldiers, right? And they're all mad for like salsa, bachata, and then you get like the line dancing group and all this kind of shit. So my big mate Paul, he's a big handsome bastard. Um, he had been there for years, and he's like, "Mate, let's go to fucking salsa night." And I was like, "Salsa? Fuck off! I'm not going to salsa night." He's like, "Mate, let's go to salsa night." I was like, "All right, let's go." So we went round to salsa night. I thought it was gonna be like this gay kind of stuff. I thought, "Nah, I'm not really into this, mate. It's no my thing." It was not. Like, we went into this room, mate, and it was like the starting scene of Dirty Dancing when she's carrying the watermelons and she backs off into the room, and it's like purple lights, everything's dark. People were like getting pregnant, dancing, mate. I was like, "What the fuck is this?" It was just insane. And I had a North Face black jacket on with a Velcro big British flag in my arm. And then straight away, this American pilot, she was from Venezuela. Her name was Veronica. She came straight up to me and she's like, "Do you know how to dance?" And I was like, "I don't have a fucking clue." And she's like, "Just follow me." And she was just like dancing the shit out of me. She was just throwing me about like an empty tracksuit. And I was just like, "This is this is amazing." So I actually learned how to like dance salsa, bachata, merengue when I was in Afghanistan, which is pretty fucking random.
That's insane. That sounds like the perfect life for like a kind of young, handsome, fit, uh, Afghani veteran. Like that's not
Aye,
Afghanistan veteran.
yeah.
Like you walked into the dream job essentially.
Yeah,
What
it was
so
brilliant.
what did the day in the life of a close protection slash bodyguard look like in that case? What was your actual role?
Yeah, so there was different ground roles, and then the main one that I ended up taking over was like, so the US Air Force, they handed over all the security type work, like all the Sanger bullshit work that soldiers don't want to do around the base. They handed that over to Gurkhas. Now, they're not British Army Gurkhas. They're like Nepalese Army, ex-Indian Army Gurkhas. So I never knew. I thought you had to be in the British Army to be a Gurkha. It's not the case. Gurkha is a region in Nepal from the region. I think it's called Gurkhali or something like that. If you're from the region of Gurkhali, I could be mistaken. I'm sorry, but I know it may not be pronounced like that. Anyway, it's the same thing. If you're from that region, then you are a Gurkha. like saying you're a Ouija from Glasgow, you know what I mean? So they were
Mhm.
all like Indian Army Gurkhas. I mean, they were a joke. They weren't anything like British Army Gurkhas. They were clowns. But so I took over the role of being like their manager for training. I used to train them on weapon systems, fucking how things are seen, like how you notice something if it's camouflaged in the background. How can you spot it? You know, shape, shine, shadow, silhouette, movement, blah blah blah. All this bollocks. Um, teach them first aid. Teach them Pierce fire maneuver, all this kind of shit. So we done that. Um, and then when so after that, I'd done that for quite a while. Pardon me. And then obviously I was the same as every guy in that job, getting tons of shit from the missus. Oh, you need to come back. You're never here. Feels like I don't have a man, and all this kind of bollocks. So at that point, I was like, what the fuck am I going to do? Because it was obviously good money. And I've got a good mate called Daz Lowe, and he was ex army. He was ex tanky. He'd done Iraq. So I kind of mind if he'd done Afghan, and maybe he'd done the first Afghans when it was called Tosca or some shit. But he done them. Um, and that he was working in the pylons now with Balfour Beatty. And really, see, to get in the pylons, I don't know if it's still the same, but when I was there, even the first day when I actually got the job and we started training, they were like, "Yeah, if you don't know anyone in this job, you ain't getting the job. That's just how it works, you know." So I knew Daz, and he knew the recruitment guy who was in his regiment previously as well, Mark. So I flew home from Afghan. Now, do you want to hear the story in this? This is a fucked up story. So I was 3 months into my 6 month deployment, right? And it was like coming up to the December, and I wasn't going home until like again, my rotations coming around the kind of following March again. So I couldn't get home. And Daz was like, mate, I've got you an interview. Like all the interviews have been held in Derby. It's on this date. Let's just say it was the 11th of December, whatever it is. They're all being held on this date. Like, I was like, can you postpone? Is there, like, when's the next interview stage, mate? I'm going to be home in March. Is there anything? He's like, mate, this is the last one. If you don't take this now, I can't get you in again because I've already like really fucking pushed the boat here to make sure that they get you in. I was like, oh no. So this is fucked up. I phoned my sister and I told her, I was like, Ali, I've got this fucking job interview. I need to come back and do it. So I gave my sister my boss's telephone number in Afghan. I got her to phone my boss from Cumbernauld and say, "Oh, look, can you get a hold of Ryan? He's not answering his phone. Just tell him his mum's not well. She's in the hospital. Like, can you get him to contact me ASAP?" So my boss rang me, was like, "Hey, brother, what's going on?" I was like, "Yeah, mate, I'm just round at the Sanger." And he's like, "Hey, you gotta call home, man. Your mom's in the hospital." I was like, "Ah, fuck." So I called home. Well, sorry, yeah, I called home while I was in the office, and obviously I knew they could hear me in the background. Um, and I was just like going through the motions with my sister. Ah, you're fucking joking me. She all right? Oh, you're joking, you know. He's like, what's up? I was like, oh, she's in a bad way. Blah blah blah. They're unsure. So he's like, okay, man. Hey, you gotta go home. You gotta go home, brother. So if I got the job after the interview in December, the job wasn't starting until the April or May, so I could come home and finish my contract, right? So I ended up my boss let me go home to see make sure for like 10 days to make sure my mum was all right and blah blah blah. But actually, I'm sorry to say this, I just had to fucking wing it, lads. It's not a nice thing to do, but it's a funny fucking story at the same time. I got home, went for the interview, got the job, flew back to Afghan, and and everything was hunky dory. And then, because when I flew home for the interview, sorry, they obviously, if I took all my kit, they would be like, "He's not coming back, and we're fucked." So I was like, "Boss, look, I'm going to leave all my kit here. I'm literally taking, one change of clothes and just taking my little day sack, on the plane. I'm going to leave all my kit here, all the weapons, blah blah blah." He's like, "Yeah, yeah, fucking sound." So they obviously knew that I was coming back because all my gear was there, my laptops and everything. So I came home, got the job with Balfour Beatty, and then flew back. And obviously, when I went back in the March, I then obviously had told them, "Look, I'm going to hand in my notice, blah blah blah," and that was it. So that's the messed up story how I got the job with Balfour Beatty.
Did they ever suspect that when you went home that one time it was for a job interview?
No, so I hope they don't see this because I
I was
do
gonna say
really
you just
like the
outed
guys, and they're
yourself.
going to be like, I was going to say they're going to be like, he is a fucking scumbag, and we liked him.
You're a scumbag, mate.
I know, I'm sorry.
Mm.
No
So
bluff,
the
good
job
bluff.
with Balfour Beatty on the pylons, are they
Yep.
electricity pylons? Like constructing
Yeah.
them, working on them?
Aye, so you get like foundations, the guys that put in the concrete foundations. Then you get erectors, the guys that build the tower, like a kind of mechanical set, and then you get the wiring gang that put in the wires. I was in the wiring gang, um, and we were on that new contract from Bule to Denny, or Denny to Bule, however you want to look at it, with a big 500 kilovolts or whatever it is. And when I was down at Derby at the training centre for Balfour Beatty, like it would be like the slightest bit of rain, and it'd be like, right down off the tower, and I was like, why? Yeah, you don't climb when it's raining; it's too dangerous. I was like, you don't climb when it's raining, and you're sending me to fucking Scotland. I was like, we will never be working in Scotland. It rains every fucking day. Um, but then I found out that was just bullshit. You know, like when you get there, it was one of those things. Balfour Beatty was massive on health and safety. So if you were up on a rig and like you literally moved your safety goggles to like rub your eye, the health and safety guy would be like, "Oi, get your fucking goggles back on." You'd be like, "Yeah, sorry, mate, I was just fucking scratching my eye. Calm down, fucking give us a break." Um, but then it was odd. The days that there was literally, I'm not even exaggerating, 40-mile-an-hour winds. It was like the snow was blasting you 40 miles an hour side on, and you were fucking swinging on the lines. You couldn't even hear the guy speak in front of you. And it was just torrential storms. Like the health and safety guy always seemed to be in a meeting in London that day and wasn't anywhere around, you know. So it was pretty. The Balfour Beatty were pretty bullshit that way with the health and safety.
So was that one of the reasons you left that job, because of this kind of stringent rule set and code of conduct that you had to follow? Much like why you left the army, it was pink and fluffy. Is that why you left
Bullshit.
the yeah, is that why you left
I
that
just
job?
hated the job, mate. I mean, look, it was I really loved Daz for getting me the job. You know, I really respect him for that, and he knows I love him to bits. I just hated the job, man. I'd done it for about 18 months, and I was just like, this isn't fucking me. They were all guys that like to work with their hands, the type of guys that love to be mechanics and, you know, tinker about with engines at the weekend and all that kind of shit. I hated all that shit, you know. So I was just like, this isn't for me. So I was, do you know what? I was going to stick it out because even as a trainee, right, not even knowing how to tie a rope properly, you were making 51 grand a year, but you were doing 17 days on, 3 days off. And your 3 days off wasn't really 3 days off because your first day home, you're absolutely fucking burst. You've had to drive for hours and hours from wherever you were. Well, Daz would always drive. I would just always get my head down. But you would then get home, put all your gear in the wash, prep it all. So your first, and then you probably have a bevy. So then your Saturday, you woke up rough. Sunday, you just packed all your gear, and the Monday morning you were driving back again. So you never really got 3 days off, you know. And it was just you just get burst with it all. You just get really, really burst with it. And I remember waking up one day. It was 4:30 in the morning. I looked out the window and the snow was belting down in Cumbernauld, and we were working just past Perth. So we used to come home at night time and just take the hit and leave at like 5 in the morning to get there for 7. And I remember just thinking, this can't be my fucking life, man. I was just not born to wake up, graft, you know, until like my bones literally hurt and pay bills and die. I was like, this just isn't my life. I was not meant to live this life. I just knew I was meant for something different. Um, and I was like, I need to get out of this. So I was still going to stay at that point. What happened was I went on holiday to Greece. And when I came back, Balfour Beatty were having cutbacks. And what I didn't know is they were actually cutting all the scumbags who used to get wasted and like we used to call it dipping a shift. They never used to turn up on a Monday or Tuesday because they were already smashed for the weekend, and then they would just rock up on a Wednesday as if nothing happened. And Balfour Beatty were in a position where they just couldn't sack people for that, you know. So they had to make it out as if they were cutting back on everyone. So they were like, "Yeah, you're at risk, you're at risk," and I was at risk because I was one of the newest members. I was still a trainee, but I was there for a year, never dipped a shift. One time I actually roasted my hand. I mean, it was blistered out to here. I burnt it with cooking oil, cooking my meal prep for going back there. And I called in. I was like, boss, I'm at the hospital. It's fucking 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm not dipping my shift, but I'm going to be sitting here for fucking hours before they even see me. But I promise you, you know, once I get seen at the hospital, I will be straight up for my shift. So straight after the hospital, mate, 7 o'clock in the morning, necked a coffee, had a bandage in my hand. My hand was just fucked with burns. Um, and I drove up to Perth, back up to the pylons, and I did work. So I never ever dipped a shift. I just grafted and got through it, and they really appreciated that. But because they'd already said we're going to have cutbacks and we're going to thin you all out, what happened was I put a post on Facebook, and I was like, right, do you know what? If I'm going to lose this job, I'm just going to go back to doing close protection. So when I was working in Afghan, one of my mates, Baz Aspinall, was like, "Look, if you get any jobs going over there," one of my mates, Martin Grant, is really dying to get. He was an ex Coldstream Guards, something like Grenadier Guards, one of the two. He's dying to get into close protection. He's done like 14 years army, tons of tours, but he just can't get a fucking job. And that's what it was like for a lot of people if you don't really know anyone. So I said, mate, send me a CV. I'll try and get him a gig. So he sent me a CV, and I did get him a gig. And I didn't even know the guy. And then, you know, fast forward a couple of years later, we followed each other on Facebook, but we never actually spoke after that. And then, so fast forward a couple of years to, my time at the pylons, I put a post on Facebook saying, lads, is there anybody got work going over in Iraq or Afghan? I'm looking to get back into CV. I'm just about to lose my job in Balfour Beatty. And he private mailed me within 2 to 3 minutes. And he was like, Mac, I know we don't speak much, mate, but I will never forget you fucking squared me away when you didn't even know me. Now it's my turn to return the favour. I'm actually a manager for one of the close protection companies in Iraq. He's like, I can have you over here in a fucking week, mate. You send me your passport, you send me this, that, the other, your SIA license. I will have you in a flight fucking next week and they'll have you working with me. And I was like, no danger. And he's like, mate, I've never forgot you squared me away. And I'm happy to return the favour. And he did, mate. I literally was like, Balfour Beatty, right, I'm off because you've given me no choice. And then at that point, they told me, oh, you're not one of the ones that's going. I was like, well, mate, you're a bit late. Like, my mate, Martin's just broke his back to get me a fucking flight and everything booked for next week. You guys told me I was getting sacked, So it was a little bit bittersweet where I wasn't going to get sacked in the end, but I didn't know that and they couldn't tell me that. Excuse me. So yeah, a week later, mate, I was back in Iraq in the sandpit.
So, who were you looking after as a bodyguard when you were in Iraq? Was it
It's just
someone
oil
important?
workers, just oil workers, mate. I mean, I don't mean just oil workers. Of course, everyone's important, but they were just oil workers, pipe fitters, and all this. But I mean, the job, in my opinion, was fucking brain dead again. You think it's Ali? We have a saying in the army. It's Ali. It just means you look cool as fuck, like a Navy SEAL or bodyguard. It sounds amazing. Everything's fucking Ali, and it was dog shit. You were just a taxi driver with a gun. You literally got up at 5 in the morning, went and picked this guy up at the compound, drove for 3 hours through the desert, dropped him off at the BP oil refinery. He went inside for about 10 to 12 hours. You sat outside in your car in fucking, 55-degree heat. You sat there for 10, 12 hours doing fuck all, just talking to guys in the other vehicles, and then you would drive back. And you'd done that for 8 weeks, and it was just fucking Groundhog Day. Um, and I'd done that for about a year, and that's how I knew it wasn't for me. I was like, yeah, this ain't for me. So instead of wasting my time, I just put it into learning. Time I was dipping into the financial markets, like to learn how to trade. I was trying to learn how to trade, but at that point, I mean, I never actually managed it at that point.
Why would those pipe fitters and oil executives and oil workers need bodyguards?
Because if they're out there, well, they need bodyguards for the transport. I mean, there's still always a threat of ISIS and all that. I mean, to be honest, when we were there, nothing ever happened. I even walked through Baghdad one day when I had to go to the hospital. Yeah, so when you get your passport in Iraq, when you first land, you have to go and get what's called a blood stamp every time you land in the country, and you basically have to go to a local hospital and get an HIV test, and then they stamp your passport to say that you don't have HIV yet. I'm sure it's called a blood stamp. So you have to go and get that. And it was literally what you can't take body armor and guns and shit into a hospital. So I was literally walking through the town of Baghdad with my shirt and trousers, and it was fine. Nobody bothered me. It was wasn't hostile at all. So um, there's just always that risk that something could kick off. As we've seen, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, when everything was fine, and then all of a sudden, the U.S. embassy over there got bombarded by mortars and small arms fire, and it just happened randomly. So you just never know if something's going to happen.
So, given that you had a little taste for the financial markets through the self studying that you were doing whilst being a bodyguard,
Mhm.
did you already have that as the North Star that you were going to go run towards after bodyguarding, or did you just think, I've had enough of bodyguard, I'm going to quit and just see what happens next?
Yeah, so we kind of need to jump back to the army for that as well. Excuse me. So, what happened was the whole financial markets thing. When we go back to when I was in the army and I'd signed off and still wasn't sure if I was 100% getting this close protection job, blah, blah, blah. I was in my room one night and one of the lads called Jamie Lamont heard that I'd signed off. And honestly, mate, I was so fucking army. Nobody in my regiment could believe that I'd fucking signed off and they hadn't. They were like, how the fuck is this guy leaving and we're not, because I loved it, mate. So Jamie came round in total disbelief, like, no way, man, have you signed off? I thought people were talking shit. I said, no, I've done it. And he says, what are you going to do? I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And he said to me, have you ever thought about Forex? And I went, Jamie, do you know what, mate? I have looked at Forex 100 times, and every time I watch videos about it in YouTube, it just fries my brain. I'm just, I mean, I left school at 15, mate. I'm just never going to get this. I've tried to learn it so many times, and my brain is fried when I watch the videos. And he went, no, look, he says, I've got this course back. I've got a copy. These two American guys are like really top traders around the world. They've got a course. It's 4 videos. Each video is 4.5 hours long. and the course is 5 grand, but I've got a copy of it. I'll send you if you want. I was like, mate, send it. So he passed it across to me, and I literally watched about 20, 30 minutes. My brain was fried, and I was just like, I'm never going to fucking get this. Fuck that. And I binned it off. The guys done the video very well. They would only speak for about 10, 15 minutes, one of them, and then the next one would just cut in. He would start speaking. So it didn't feel like death by PowerPoint. You know, the way they'd done it was good. I just couldn't get it. I just couldn't understand it. Excuse me. So then, fast forward again to the Iraq time, and I thought, right, let's try this forex again because I wanted to do a job where I could make as much money as possible. In the sense of, I didn't want to come home and be in a job, like let's say back in Scottish Power, where someone's like, right, we're going to pay you 27 grand a year, regardless of how hard you work or how shit of a worker you are. You're just getting that a year. I wanted a job where if I put in the graft and the time, I can make as much money as possible. So that's obviously things like forex if I learned it, and sales. So I was actually applying for tons and tons of sales jobs because I thought, right, if you can sell well, then you can make a lot of money as a good salesman. So I was doing all this, and what happened was, pardon me, guys, I'm sorry. Um, I was looking. I'd applied for tons. Arnold Clark, kitchens, windows, you name it, lads. I'd bloody applied for it, and I saw this one job, and it said business development manager, Southeast Asia, like Hong Kong, Singapore, blah blah blah. And it said minimum requirements 2 years sales experience. It's telesales, full training is provided, although experience is preferred. Blah blah blah. We provide your accommodation, we pay your flights out and home again. If it doesn't work out for you, we'll cover your flights home, your visas, your medical. I was like, what? So I just literally deleted like 3 years of my CV from close protection and the pylons, and I put in sales. And my mate was a salesman, so I put in sales. I was like, mate, what do you sell? And he's like, this, right, how many leads do you get a week? How many do you close? What's your commission percentage? Do you get paid weekly, monthly? And I literally put his life on my CV. Um, and it was like weeks later. So I applied for it when I was still with my ex girlfriend at the time. And but we hated each other at that point. We were just really staying together because of the kid, but you just can't stay with someone for that. So we just fucking hated being in each other's presence. So I remember she was sitting in that couch over there, and I was sitting here and just looked up. She was watching TV. I just thought, if I get this, I'm getting to fuck out of here. So I was like applying for it, and I never expected to get the job. I never expected it. So I applied for it, never heard anything back. And about 6 weeks after I had actually applied for it, we had obviously broke up. I was then on my arse because I had no money coming in. I was paying all these bills. I was paying her car, my car. I was paying the house. I was paying like credit cards. I wasn't crazy in credit cards, but you still have to pay the little bills and stuff. Paying the gas and electricity, and I was on my arse, guys. I swear that was the worst time of my life where I literally had like £1.75 in the bank. The next week, I had about 3.5 grand to come out. I had everybody and their dog calling me, like, where the fuck's the money? Like all the credit cards, bank, car companies, you name it. I was bound. I mean, I was essentially homeless because I was out of the house that I was fucking paying for. And I wasn't sleeping on the streets homeless, but I would go to my sister Alison's for 3, 4 nights. Then you kind of feel that you're outstaying your welcome, even though she loves me. But you're like, you can tell you're getting under people's feet, right? Then I would go and stay at my sister Dawn's, and then I was really grateful that they all took me in. And Dawn was like, just come and stay with me, and that was fine. So I did stay with Dawn for a while, and yeah, it was the shittest part of my life, mate. I had literally hit rock bottom. It was fucking brutal. I'm not gonna lie. So I was in my sister Dawn's couch one morning, and I remember this, mate. It was unbelievable. I'm sitting on the couch. I was in my pajamas. I felt like a tramp. Hadn't shaved. I was just really down in the dumps, feeling sorry for myself. And I had my feet on top of my hold all, which had every worldly possession in it. And I remember I put my head in my hands, and I just went, "What the fuck are you gonna do now, Rido?" And mate, the instant I said that, no word of a lie, my phone started going. And I was like, "What the fuck?" And I looked, and it was this crazy phone number, and it said Hong Kong. I was like, "The fuck's calling me for Hong Kong?" And it was 6 weeks after I applied, mate. I had completely forgot, and I wasn't going to answer it. I thought at that time, I don't know if you remember, there was a scam thing going around where people would call you from like a Mexico number, and you'd pick it up, and it would start charging like £30 a minute, right? Um, there was that scam was going around, so I thought, "Fuck, that's going to be that scam," but it's just not Mexico. It's Hong Kong. And I went, "Do you know what? I don't even have 30 fucking pound a minute to spend. I don't even have the money in my bank, so I'm just going to answer it. They won't get any fucking money out of me." So I answered the call, And it was just this guy like, "Hello, is that Ryan?" I was like, "Yes." "Oh, this is Ian. Do you remember you applied for a job in Southeast Asia, blah, blah, blah?" And of course I did, it's the only one job I applied for. And he's like, "You still interested?" And I was like, "Fucking right." So I went through the telephone I went through the telephone interview, then I went through a Skype interview, then they sent you out this email. It was like a sales what's the word? You had to do a test. I can't remember what a psychometric test for sales to see if you had the right mindset of what they're looking for, if you're extrovert, introvert, all this kind of shit. Um, I done that, and then I went and met someone, and then yeah. Long story short, I got the job, and I literally blagged the whole thing as if I'd been a salesman for like 3 years, just basing it, just memorizing my mate's job. Um, so I then got the job, and they could have sent me anywhere in Asia. This company was huge. They've got offices all over the world: Denmark, Malta, Indonesia, Malaysia, everywhere. So they sent me to the Indonesian office, and this is the crazy part. Excuse me. So this is wild, and honestly, if you're listening and watching this right now, you will not believe this story, and I can 100% verify this is true. I swear in my son's life, this is a true story. So I gets to the office in Indonesia, right? Nobody speaks English. There's like literally nobody speaks English. It's not like Malaysia or Philippines where everyone can speak English. It's very different here. Nobody can speak it. So I rocked up. I'm in the training. There was obviously an English sales teacher teaching us all the stuff. He was from England as well. And then the next minute, um, the boss walked in, the chief trader walked in, sorry, CEO, and he was an American guy. So it was kind of like, oh, white friend, a Bule friend. So we became mates, and he was like, "Where you from, man?" I said, "Oh, I'm from Scotland." I told him about my military background, and you know what Americans are like; they're always mad about ex services. So, thank you for your service and all that shit. Um, so he then this is the crazy part, guys. So he then said to me, "Have you ever done trading before?" And at this point, I wasn't learning. It was with a trading company. This job, sorry, I think I forgot to mention that. This job was with a trading company, but it was to do the business development management to bring them more clients from Europe to invest in their platform and their traders, right? So that's what the job was. It was doing sales essentially. And he was like, "Have you ever done sales? Sorry, have you ever done forex and trading before?" I says, "Do you know what, boss? I've looked into it a million times, but I, I just can't understand it. It just fries my brain." And I said, I got a copy of this course with these two American guys, Steve Morrow and Zen." And he interrupted me and went, "Zen Aldridge?" And I was like, "Yeah." I said, "How the fuck did you know that? Do you know him?" And he's like, "I'm Zen Aldridge." And I was like, "No." And guys, I swear on my son's life, this is true. I'll show you a photograph right now. The guy from the course that Jamie Lamont sent me in the army 6 years previous, that I was watching his course in the army, 6 years later, he was now the chief trader in the company that I was working for. I shit you not. And I was just like, get to fuck. How does this happen? We then became really close mates. We used to go for lunch all the time. Look, that's me and Zen right there. So, where's my camera? That's me and Zen right there. That is us. And he became a chief trader. And about a year and a half after I was doing the whole sales job, he just chat my office one day and he's like, "Hey man, you want to learn how to trade?" And I was like, "Fucking right." 'Cause I used to see these guys in the office. They would come in, trade for 2 hours, and fuck off, and they would be clearing like 200 grand a month. I was like, "What?" Excuse me. So when he was like, "Do you want to learn how to trade?" I was like, "Fucking right, I do, mate." So he's like, "Right, from Monday morning, this is no longer your office. You come and sit beside me." And he taught me how to trade, and that's how I got into it.
Holy shit! I can't imagine how motivated you must have been to learn trading when some distant person that never knew you existed 6 years ago is now
Yep.
your mentor and coach. You must have been
Yep.
so inspired and motivated to learn.
Mate, it was unbelievable. It was because actually, do you know what? I'm the type of person that if I watch that kind of course online, I need to be beside someone to actually so that I can say, "Hey, what does that line mean? Oh, that's the 50 EMA, right? What does that do? What's its purpose?" I have to be there for someone to physically show me. If you tell me, I'll forget. If you show me, I'll remember. Let me do it, and I will understand. And that's really how I learn. So being able to sit beside him and just watch everything play out was just phenomenal.
So once you got your hands on the platform and you started
Mhm.
trading and you learned the ropes, what type of life did trading in Indonesia afford you?
Mate, a brilliant life. So I'm pretty much set. So what happened was after about 3 years of trading with that company, I was pretty much set. Like, I mean, I could have just stopped working from then on. And when COVID kicked in, after about 3 months, we were obviously working from home at that point. After about 3 months, the company were like, "Mate, we're closing the office in Jakarta. You can still work for us, but like you have to move to another country, maybe China or whatever." And I was like, "Lads, I'm not being funny. I'm already married here now. I've already learnt the bloody Indonesian language. You know, I've bought an apartment here. I've got cars here. I've got pets here." I was like, I ain't moving, sorry. And they were like, yeah, well, you can't work with us anymore. And I said, yeah, that's fine. We left on really good terms. I mean, they're still my mates right now. Even the owner, we're still talking a monthly basis. We're still good mates. Um, but I was just at home trading my own money because I thought, yeah, I was fine. I already had enough dough to, set up for life. And I was just trading my own money from home. And that literally lasted about a week. And then an American guy called me. Um, and he was like, right, I heard you don't work for Mr. Lee anymore. And I was like, no. And he's like, do you want to fucking trade my PAM accounts? It means like my clients' accounts. And I was like, yeah, sure, mate. I went, but look, he's based in London. It's a London company. And I was like, "But I ain't moving, mate." And he's like, "You don't have to move." He's like, "I'll give." I mean, he said, "I don't give a shit if you're in Bali or Jakarta. I don't care where you are. If you have an internet signal and a laptop, you just log in to the PAM account, the master account, and just trade for my clients." And I was like, "Sweet." So now I've been trading for him for like the last 3 years as well. On top of that,
That's insane. Like you've set yourself up for life living in one of the most beautiful countries in the world in a lovely apartment with some amazing pets and a beautiful wife. Most
yep.
people would be happy at just living life just like that. But then you
hmm
started forcing yourself into the most uncomfortable environments with your outdoorsmanship. You started to embark on some of the craziest natural physical
Aye.
endeavors.
Yep.
Talk about that, mate. What did you end up getting up to?
Yeah, so what happened was my life was great. I had nothing else to. I had no worries about bills and this kind of stuff. And by the way, I've never been a really, monetary person. I've never been someone who's into Lambos and Rolexes and all this shit. I did know that, and I do believe that money's important because now that I do have a bit of dough, I don't have fucking worries. I don't worry about hospital bills. I don't worry about, oh fucking my gas and electricity's up this month. And it does bring a nice level of peace to your life. But I've just never been someone who wants to get lamboed up and all this kind of fancy shit. Um, but what was I going to say there? Sorry, say that question again. Sorry, I fucking digressed. What were you going to say?
S- So you've got this lifestyle whereby you're secure, you don't
Yep.
have to worry, but you've then forced yourself into some of the
Yes,
most physically demanding endeavors.
that's what it was. Sorry. So sorry, I was digressing there. Yeah. So I went through this phase, right, of having a nice, comfortable life that I really enjoyed. I love trading. And then I kept waking up. I went through this phase. I'm sure many ex-army people went through it, where I kept waking up in the morning and I was dying to go back and rejoin the army and do like my last 12, 13 years, whatever it was. And I don't know what it was, guys. I couldn't shake it. Every morning I woke up and I was dying to go back and rejoin. And I would speak to my mates for the army, who some of them were still in. They were like, "Mate, don't do it. Like, this is fucking horrific. We're only here because we're already in, our 17th year. You're gonna come back at fucking 35 as a Lance Jack or full screw or whatever, and a 35-year-old lunch sack, that would be dog shit. It's not the army that you're thinking about in your mind. And I was like, yeah, it's true. So I knew I was never going to go back, but I still kept waking up every day dying to go back and join the army. So I said to my wife, I said, you know what? See, every kind of 2 weeks, every second weekend, I'm going to go out I mean, the jungle was only an hour's drive from where we live. So I was like, I'm going to go out to the jungle, mountains, volcanoes, and just going to go exploring the islands and stuff every second week just to get this adventure stuff out my system. Obviously, she's not into camping and shit, so she's not going to come. I just want to get all this outdoor adventure, living rough stuff out my system. So I'd done it, and I would go out and I would make like shelters in the jungle, like bushcraft. And sometimes I would use a hammock and all this. I would just pitch up a hammock beside a waterfall, and sleep there at night. It was just fucking phenomenal, mate. And I started showing my mates on my phone the videos that I took when I was out camping in the jungle. My British mates here, and they were like, "Mac, you should put that on YouTube." He's like, "This is the kind of shit I stay up watching at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Watching random guys building swimming pools in the jungle and shit." So I put it on YouTube, mate, and at the end of week 1, I had 71 subscribers, and at the end of week 3, I had 150,000 subscribers, and my channel just exploded, and it was just absolutely nuts.
Why do you think that virality occurred? Do you think it's just because it was a rare look into a life that not many people live? It just became such high entertainment for people.
No, do you know what it was? What I'm doing is very segmented in terms of there are tons of people here doing survival, doing mountain stuff, doing adventures. There's even really good Indonesian ones doing it. Excuse me. Um, the difference with me, right? See in Indonesia, nobody speaks English. You know, you get the odd one, but out of all, there's probably about 5% of the country who can actually speak English. Whereas in Malaysia, everybody can speak English. You know, um, and they really love foreigners here. So this country, they're the kindest, friendliest, most welcoming people I have ever met in my life. And they call if you're a black foreigner, let's say you're from the Caribbean or you're from Mauritius or whatever, right? And you come here, then you're a foreigner. But if you're a white foreigner, you get called Bule. That's where my name comes from, Bule Bolang. So Bule Bolang. If you're a white foreigner, then they call you Bule. So I then started to speak the language, and they absolutely love seeing, foreigners trying to learn the language. They love it. So I also have a rescued pet called a Luwak. Have you ever heard of the most expensive coffee in the world, where this animal eats the coffee chews, it shits out the
And it shits it
coffee?
out.
Yeah. So I've got one of them as a rescue in the back, and over here it's a kind of poor man's pet, right? People, it's a villager pet. Like no, most people in the city don't have it. Like my wife and her family would never have that type of pet and stuff. So all of a sudden you've got this ex-British Army guy who I was using my old Army Bergen, which is massive. It's like a 140-liter Bergen. I was using that when I was in the jungle. You've got this white bully guy, as they call it, walking around the jungle, camping out, with his big gear, with his big gear, and I had my Luwak on top of my bag, so I used to take her out in the jungle with me, and she just used to tag along in the jungle. I used to let her run around and blah blah blah. So what do you call it? They were just like, holy shit, there's this white dude running around the jungle, building, bamboo shelters, swimming in the river with his pet Luwak, and they just couldn't believe it. And I think that's why it really went viral. One of my videos, I collabs with this really famous guy called Panji Patulang, and he really made it go viral. He had like 2 million subscribers at the time, and he made a video with me, right? And this is what propelled it really. Um, he had 2 million subscribers at the time, and what happened? We made a video just sitting down, doing a survival thing, showing them inside my survival tin. And inside my survival tin, I had a condom, and that's for carrying water, right? Excuse me. It was so on my video, my thumbnail was British Army soldier survives in the jungle using a condom. So, but I typed that out in the Indonesian language. So obviously Indonesians were like, "What the fuck? How do you survive using a condom?" So that was a kind of clickbait thumbnail. And so surprisingly, even though it was definitely Panji doing the collaboration that made my channel explode, if you watch his video of that version, he's got like 900,000 views on that, and I've got like 6.5 million views. It's just mental how it turns. So that's what really made the channel explode.
Just so I can take like 6 steps back, how on earth do you survive in the jungle with a condom? What the heck?
Sock around so that you can then open it again later to drink, and you can carry it around. And obviously, being inside the sock, you can then hold it without it like slipping through your hands and all that.
That is
That's how
nuts.
it
That
works.
is nuts, mate. So is your audience primarily Indonesian in that case?
Yes, mate. Like 98% are Indonesian.
So at what point did you continue or have the appetite to continue to make that a kind of full almost side hustle almost?
Yeah,
Was it the fact that you got 6 million views on that video? Did you think, oh, maybe I'm onto something?
well, what happened was, mate, I ended up getting sponsored. I got sponsored by the North Face in Kawasaki. So, like Kawasaki, you might like, where's the correlation to that? So, the first videos were kind of survival, but then I changed away from that because when I realized, you know what, there's actually something in here. This channel's going to go somewhere. I thought, if you look at survival, right? If you have an umbrella here and the main one is survival, there's nothing underneath that. You're not going to get who's going to sponsor you, but somebody's going to sponsor you a camping knife. Nobody's going to give you endorse you or sponsor you. There's nothing. And then you have to think of content for every single video. What's the storyline? What am I going to do? There's only so many shelters you can build. Only so many times you can make a fire with your hands and shit. And it's going to get boring even for me. Never mind the viewers. So I then simply changed it to an adventure channel. So underneath the umbrella of adventure, I can go jet skiing at 1,000 Islands. I can go scuba diving. I can go paragliding. I can go skydiving. I can do survival. I can do the mountains and volcanoes. Like I can. There's just so many avenues you can go down underneath the umbrella of adventure. So I changed it to adventure. and that's where the name Bule Bolang comes from. So Bule is obviously me because I'm a white foreigner, and Bolang is an Indonesian word which is two words which have been chopped and then combined. It means Bocha Petualang. Bocha means kid, and Petualang means adventure. So Bule Bolang essentially means the white adventure kid. That's what the name means, and that's not funny to us. But when you say Bule Bolang to Indonesians, they burst out laughing because they find it funny, you know. So that's why it's quite catchy for Indonesians, and it's not really for us.
Can you tell me about your Indonesian paragliding training experience?
That was wild. So I said to the guy, I mean, at that point, my Indonesian was Tarzan Indonesian. You know, I could order a bottle of juice, I could order fried rice, you know, nasi goreng. Excuse me. That was about it. I couldn't really speak. So I said to the guy, look, I'll come and do it. I'm dying to learn paragliding, but listen, you're going to have to give me a guy who can speak English because I'm never going to learn it in Bahasa. He's like, yeah, no problem, my friend. So I paid the guy. And he's like, "Yeah, I'll get you one of the Indonesian the Indonesian national team champions." I was like, "Oh, fucking sweet," which he was. He didn't lie. But I got there, and the guy couldn't even say hello. I mean, when he was saying left and right, he was going F F I F, and I was like, "What the fuck is this guy saying?" And he was trying to say left and right, and he couldn't even say it. So that was a disaster. I was like, "How am I going to learn this?" So what I ended up doing was I literally got him to point at shit, or you know, as it was on the ground, and I opened up YouTube and I watched like paragliding tutorials on YouTube as he was pointing to stuff. So I had to kind of correlate between the video with the guy speaking English and what he was trying to teach me on that. The only kind of saving grace when it came to actually flying and landing is that I have done skydiving before. I haven't got my full license, but I've done like 7 or 8 jumps myself, doing what's called a RAPS course, static line. So I had done them, so I knew kind of like how to flare, how to land, how to turn. I kind of had those principles. Although paragliding is a bit different because you don't just come down, you can also go back up and float around and blah, blah, blah. But at least I had the basics of landing and taking off.
That's hilarious. What a of all I remember we were speaking earlier about how you're a very hands-on learner, you like being showed, instead of being told.
Yep.
Um, and you like watching like videos
Aye.
online to teach yourself different lessons. But I think paragliding of all things is something you don't want to learn on your own. You don't want to be self-taught.
No, I know.
But the fact that you just basically self-taught yourself with a coach over your shoulder and then just jumped off a hill somewhere or jumped off a landing somewhere,
Yep.
um, that's insane, mate. That is
Aye.
nuts.
It was nuts. And the thing was,
You've
mate, on the first day, normally by day 4 or day 5, you then get to jump. And on day 1, I had already done my first jump. So what they do is you do this. Hey, you do this little kind of ramp takeoff, and then they'll then take you up the top, and you jump on a tandem one. Oi, Luwak! You just said it that bit later. Driving me nuts. Sorry. So you, what do you call it? Yeah, so you then go up to the top, and then you go in a tandem, and but you're at the front, and the guy, sorry, you're at the back, and the instructor's at the front, and he just gonna you do it, but he's just with you, obviously, in case anything goes wrong. And then after literally one tandem flight, the guy was like, "Yeah, you're good to go, man." And then I went up, and it is nerve wracking, mate. I mean, if you can imagine turbulence in a plane, you you get that turbulence because you're obviously paragliding within the mountains, and the turbulence from the mix of the wind and the hot thermals coming up, you you're just sitting there, mate, rattling, and you're like bouncing around. And if you hit a hot air pocket, you can fly up 100 meters. And equally, if you come out of the hot air pocket and you hit a cold air pocket, you can drop 100 meters. You know, so it is quite nerve wracking. It is. It's pretty wild, mate.
That's an insane story,
It
mate.
was nuts.
I've been watching a lot of your content and consuming a lot of the endeavors that you've embarked on. Some of them have hundreds of thousands of views. Some are absolutely n- radical in nature. If I were to ask you what is the most extreme endeavor that you have done, what would come to mind? Is it Mount Rinjani?
Ah, it's a close one, mate, between Mount Rinjani and one called Mount Salak. They call it Gunung Salak. So Gunung just means mount. Gunung Salak. That's probably the most extreme. It's not the highest. Mount Rinjani is a million. It's the biggest one I've done. It's like 3,800 meters. So, like, if you think about it this way, if you get when you get to 1,800 meters, which is the same height as Ben Nevis, you're only at base camp in the mountains over here. That one mountain, Gunung Rinjani, is about two-thirds the size of the entire Cairngorms National Park. So that's just one mountain. To give you a sense of scale, it's unbelievable. And it was horrific. It was pretty emotional. So that's definitely
Tell
one of
the
them.
listeners about that trail.
Was that?
Tell the listeners about that trek.
Yeah. So it's got this one mountain's got everything. It's got savanna. So you're up this steep incline savanna, and the whole track is like black ash because when the volcano erupts, it just leaves all this black ash. So you're just slipping down, like walking up a sand dune, you know. Then when you get to the kind of the camping area, which is one of the kind of summits, you look down. They've got a massive lake, and through the center of the lake, they've actually got the little kind of spout of the volcano where it erupts from. So you've got this crater so what they said is before in the past it used to be a big, massive volcano. The sides around the volcano collapsed. The cone is now poking through, and around it became a lake, which is full of fish and stuff. But the volcano still plumes out from the center. So you've got that. Down the backside, you've got hot springs that you can jump in, and the water is roasting hot. And then when you come back down the Torian route, it's all jungle. It's just absolutely out of this world. So you've got all aspects.
What made that so emotional for you? That trek.
It was we didn't have any time to rest. So you get the option for 2 days and 3 nights. And we were like, yeah, let's just do 2 days and 3 nights. And we should have taken 3 days, 4 nights. You walk for like 11 hours just to get to the camping area. You get there at about 8 o'clock at night. You will have some food, which they prepare and make. I mean, these porters are next level. You've never seen guys carry gear like this. So they carry this, they've got this bamboo pole, right? At the end of each bamboo pole, they've got a woven basket on each end, and it's got like 50 kilograms of gear. I'm not even exaggerating. I tried to pick it up, and the bamboo instantly digs into your collarbone. Like it's excruciating pain. If you imagine picking up a squat bar with 50 kilograms and resting it on one shoulder with one hand and trying to carry that up a 3,800-meter mountain. It's exactly what it's like. Excuse me. And these guys are phenomenal. And they wear flip flops, mate. They wear flip flops, and they're up and down the mountain before you. They're just off. Like if they'll stop, they'll go ahead of you. Stop, get the cooker out, prepare your meal. You get there, you have your meal, and as you're eating, they just carry off, and they're just gone. So that was phenomenal. And what made it hard is that you get there, you have your food, you maybe get to sleep for an hour and a half, then you wake back up. You have to start your summit ascent at like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. in the morning, and it's just gale force winds when you get up there, just ripping through the side of your face. The temperature is absolutely freezing. I know you think it's hot, it's Indonesia, but up at that height, it's blistering cold to the point you can't feel your toes, can't feel your fingers. And yeah, you're just literally every step you take, it's just black volcanic ash like a sand dune. So every step you take, you're sliding down every single step. So it's not only the physical side that's extremely difficult; it's the mental side. Like it's fucking emotional. It's really demotivating every time you take one step forward. You're taking three slips back. It really is a nightmare.
And that's not coming from like your average Glaswegian teenage guy. That's coming from a guy that had been tours of
Aye.
Afghanistan, who has this mental fortitude of a British forward observer
Yep.
who has done however many expeditions before. This is not like
Aye.
just a general population
No.
member saying this. This is someone who is quite clearly a nutcase, given the fact that you kept on talking about how much you love being in the army. This is like like a really hardcore guy saying this. I can't imagine what it'd be like if it was, for example, me trying to do that. I would probably have passed out
Aye.
3 hours into it.
No, it was emotional, mate. And then the thing is, when you come back down from the summit, it takes you another 6 hours to get back down. And then what you'll do is you'll have your food at the same camping area, but then they'll pack away all the gear, and then you have to walk for another 4 hours. So you get an hour's rest after that. So it's 6 hours up, 6 hours back down, an hour rest, another 4 hours back down to the next camping site. So you go down, you camp by the lake on the second night. And then obviously we got all our gear off. We ran down our flip flops to like the hot springs. We dived in the hot springs, the hot volcanic springs. That was amazing. Had dinner that night. Got to our bed, I'd say about 8 o'clock that night. and then we were woken back up at 5 a.m. to have breakfast, and then we started the trek, which was supposed to be a 12-hour trek from the lake back down a different route. You come up a route called Sembalun, and you come down the route called Torian. Excuse me. Coming back down that route, the guy said, "Look, it's going to be about 12 hours," and we actually smashed out in 6 hours 5 minutes. So yeah, we done some really good time. But my mate came with us on. He was in the same trip, but he was actually a mountain guide. He was taking like older people, and he's like, "Mate, it took us 14 and a half hours to cover that because the people were like really struggling and slow." I was just like, what a disaster, what a nightmare. But we were 6 hours, which is great.
That's insane, mate. I also saw a recent video of yours where you go to a place called Skull Island.
Yes.
That wasn't for the faint-hearted. What's that all about?
So yeah, Skull Island. It's formerly known as Desa Trunnion. Desa means village, and Trunnion is obviously the name. So it's Trunnion Village in English. And informally, it's called Skull Island. So it's a part up in the north of Bali called Kintamani, and this little village nestled right in the back of this mountain, at the base of this mountain, at the bottom of the lake as well. They have this tradition where they bury their dead topsoil. So they'll have clothes and stuff on them, the traditional Balinese dress, but they'll bury them topsoil. They literally just lay them on top of the ground, and they put this kind of bamboo, like, I don't want to say prison, this bamboo kind of fence covering them. But I mean, you can look through it and you can literally see the bodies decomposing. And then after, however many months or years, whatever, when the body's fully decomposed in its bones, they place the bones down at the back end. And pardon me, they will place the skull on this wall so it's like all lined up. And if you drop something in there, it seemed to be cursed. So if you drop money, you can't pick it up. If you drop your mobile phone, you can't pick it up. It's like, oh, you can't pick it up and take it out of you. So that's a bit of a nightmare, like trying to make sure you do not drop your wallet or anything because you can't take it out of you because they see it as being cursed. And that was really insightful. It was amazing. And there was not one bit of smell, by the way. There's a massive tree there called the banyan tree, sorry, and they claim that that tree takes the smell away. It's like some kind of spiritual thing that they believe in, and they claim that that tree takes the smell away, and you cannot smell anything when you're there. It's absolutely amazing.
That's mental, mate. Most guys that I know have hobbies of like going to the gym, reading books, listening to podcasts, or doing a podcast.
Yeah.
You literally go to an open grave as a hobby.
I do love to get involved in the culture here. Like the culture here is phenomenal. I mean, they've got 17,000 islands. They've got 700 languages and dialects. Their food, the
Wow.
choices of food here, mate, are unbelievable. I hate when I came back to Scotland when I was eating the food. I just felt like I was eating cardboard, mate, compared to the spices that I'm now used to over here and the options. It just the food that we get back home just felt so plain. I mean, don't get me wrong. I loved having a real good fish and chips. I loved like chicken korma pizza, a real good British kebab. I loved all that stuff. But I mean, I'm just so used to getting a million different spices over here. It was just phenomenal.
I know you don't always get that type of food when you're on expeditions.
Yeah.
I've seen a video of you catching a fish with your bare hands.
Aye,
That
that's
is
right.
nuts.
Aye. So that was with my little mate Daddy and Owen. So when you go into the rivers here, you can't see anything, but there's little, they call lubang. Lubang means hole. There's little holes in the rocks, and there's little fish that go in there to get away from predators. Oh, little fish, they're about this size. So you need to put your hand in and grab them out, but sometimes they do bite you, so you have to be careful. So me and Daddy and Owen and I were just grabbing the fish, lobbing them out into the rocks, and then our little guys were just like hitting them with the stones. We caught frogs and all that as well. We caught frogs down there and just ate the frogs. Yeah, it was brilliant.
What is the weirdest thing that you ended up doing as part of your adventure channel? Has there ever been a moment where you thought, I actually can't believe this is my life, or I actually can't believe I'm here doing this exact thing? When
Yes.
20, 30 years ago you were in Cumbernauld in a council estate.
Aye. So there's two things, mate. That I made. There's these guys, these American guys. They're my good mates now. They've got a YouTube channel called The Lost Boys. Their YouTube channel is bloody brilliant. They're like your typical American. Yo guys, what's up? But they're really full of energy. They're brilliant guys. I love them a bits. And we went to this. It's like a wet market. We went to a wet market in Indonesia, and they've got all these different. What do you call it? What do people call asparagus? An aphrodisiac. That's what I'm looking for. So they have these things over here like aphrodisiacs, right? And they've got these spitting cobras, like literally live spitting cobras at this wet market. And you go there, and the guy literally grabs it, chops its head off, squeezes the blood into a cup. he puts the heart still beating. He puts that into a cup. He chops the spinal cord, puts that into the cup with the blood, and then puts this alcohol called arak. It's like a moonshine, basically a homemade alcohol called arak, and they put that in to kill any germs or whatever that could be in it, and then you mix it around and you shot it, and then they skin they skin the snake and they turn it into like satay. They put it onto like wooden skewers, wooden sticks, and they barbecue it, and then you eat the cobra after it. So that's probably the craziest thing I've eaten. One of the most incredible experiences I've had, and I even took my parrot. I take my parrot when I go as well, and he loves coming like camping, hiking. So I've got a really friendly parrot. He's out the back just now, but I take him up the mountains, I take him to the jungle, and he just sits on my shoulder. He can fly away, do what he wants, and come back. We have a great relationship. So, or a great bond, I should say. So, we went to this tribe. Now, there's this old traditional tribe. They're called the Badoy, right? And how they live really deep in the jungle, and how they came around is back in the Dutch colonial days, right? When the Dutch invaded. Um, these are like groups of people who ran away deep into the jungle who didn't want to be colonized, and they never were colonized because they ran so far deep into the jungle. No Dutch people ever went there, and they just literally live off the land. They walk around, so they're not religious, like in terms of like Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, or anything, but their religion is nature. So they don't like you're not allowed to wear shoes there because they think if you wear shoes and you're walking on the mud that you're hurting Mother Earth kind of thing. Um, they live this fantastic lifestyle. They build all their own homes out of wood and bamboo from the jungle. They have this rule that whatever they take from the jungle, they must give back. So they keep the chickens underneath the thing. So the chickens like poop all in one area. Every 3 months, they'll take away the chicken poop and they'll replant that back into the jungle to help the jungle habitat grow. Um, they have like they have these fish ponds that they made, which are made from like big kind of koi carp and goldfish. That's the fish pond that they eat from. So how they get rid of the toilet? They have these other dirty little ponds that they make. These kind of the dirty little ponds, and they have like a little bamboo shelter on stilts on top of it, and you go inside that, and that's where you shower, wash, and when you go want to go for a pee or a shit, you shit obviously in there through a hole into that dirty river, and in there they have catfish who eat all the shit. So they don't eat the catfish, of course, but the catfish eat the shit. So there's no smell of like being a sewer. So the whole cycle of their life just runs through. It's just absolutely unbelievable. They make their own clothes. They harvest their own honey from the bees. Their way of life, mate, is just incredible. And I got invited in, and I went and spent 3 days living with them, and I was just like, this is unbelievable. They gave me like real honeycomb to take home with me that they had literally just cut down from the jungle canopy. You would not believe how fit these people are. There is a guy, he's about 78, 79 years old. He's in one of my videos with Eddie and Owen. So what they do is there's this thing called gula aren, right? It's real natural sugar and it comes from the aren tree. It's like a big, massive kind of pine tree, if you like. Not pine tree, a big, massive palm tree, right? And these things are like, 10, 20 meters in the air. And what they'll do is they hack away a part of this tree and this sap will come out and they put it into this bamboo pole that they've kept and they tilt it in such a way that it runs down, it fills up. They do it twice a day. Once in the morning, then they'll cut a new one. When they take the fill one up, they'll cut a new hole and place another one there for the afternoon and they keep recycling it every day. And you can drink it straight and it's pure like liquid sugar. It is beautiful. Um, and they can also take it away and process it with like they burn it, kind of like it turns into like a caramel. Then they dry it out, crush it down, and it then becomes brown sugar. But how they get up the tree, mate, they have this big, massive, long bamboo pole that goes all the way up the tree. One pole, right? Not even they don't even make ladders, mate. One pole. They chop a hole this size on each part of the pole all the way up. And this old guy climbs up that with his big toe. He just puts his big toe in the hole and climbs up it with his big toe. And he's like 78 years old. And we were just like, what? And he's climbing up this 10, 20 meter tree. And they just come back down as if it's nothing at 80 years old. It's like, come on. I mean, it's another world, mate. And by the way, we walked for about 5 miles through the jungle and he walked barefoot to do this. It's these people are just phenomenal.
Where's the Balfour Health and Safety officer when you need
I
him?
know. I know. Where is he?
That is nuts, mate. Why would he be able to like how would he be able to do that? Would the nerve endings be gone in his foot, or like the callus of the skin be too rough?
They've
How
just
could he
been
do that and we couldn't?
just been doing it since they were kids, mate. You know, so it's I mean they've got their feet are different from ours. I mean their feet are solid at the bottom. You could put a spike in that or a needle and they wouldn't even feel it. You know, it's just totally solid. Well, we
That's
had we had
insane.
a guy in the army called Stefan Botma, and he could run about in a red ash pitch in his bare feet, mate. And he was like, "Look, I got my first pair of shoes when I was 15 years old in South Africa. He just used to run about in his bare feet. So, and he was still the same. He could play football in a red ash pitch barefoot, mate, and his feet were solid. You know, just the way they've grown up.
That's nuts.
Aye.
I want to ask about your pet Lowak. What is a Lowak? I've not heard of that before. Besides
Yes.
the intro that you gave.
Yeah. So, in with the different dialects in island of Java where I live, they call it a musang, and Bali they call it a luwak. It's the same thing. It's essentially called a weasel in their language when you translate it, but it's not a weasel actually. It's called an Asian palm civet cat. So it's a palm civet, and even though they've named it an Asian palm civet cat, it's not even a cat. Um, a bit of interesting knowledge for you. So, people think that hyenas are from the dog family, the canine family, and actually they're not. Hyenas are not canines. They are what's called genets, and civets and genets are actually in the same family tree. So she's actually closer to a hyena than what she is a cat or even a weasel at that point. So she's in the same kind of lineage as I would say like a skunk, a badger, a pine marten. You know, they're all kind of in that same kind of family tree. She's basically like one of them.
And you have one in your house kicking about as
Aye,
a pet.
she's mine's is a rescue. I don't recommend anyone getting them, lads. And I'm someone who, pardon me, if you have a wild animal, I'm just like get it back in the jungle. The reason why I keep her here is because she had two back broken legs. She had this front leg was broken. She had a broken jaw, so now her mouth is like all overshot. And she can't straighten this arm. And she's like 7 years old now, and she's only like 2 kilograms. These animals in the wild should be like 10 to 12 kilograms. They should be massive, and she's only about this size. It's because she had so much trauma with the broken legs and blah 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 before. She's basically disabled. So if I took her back, she would not last a minute in the jungle because she can't climb trees the way that she should. She can't jump from tree to tree the way that she should if she didn't have the they call it a Bangkok. She didn't have the khaki leg. So she would die if I took her back to the jungle. That's why I still keep her. But she's not good as a pet. She is her and I are like that. But if anyone else goes near her, she will literally rip the finger clean off her, like a badger. These animals will fight an animal 5 times the size of them, completely fearless. My wife can't even go near her. She'll literally rip the finger off you. And they also have lockjaw, so if they bite onto you and they don't want to let go, you're not getting her off. So it's quite a dangerous pet. But I mean, her and I, because I've brought her up, like I hand fed her. I had to change her bandages like 3 times a day when she like for months and months on end. So now me and her are like this, she's like my best mate. Um, but you don't normally
So
get.
she like truly recognizes you as her dad
Oh,
and won't
yeah,
attack you or anything.
absolutely, mate. Yep.
What the hell?
It's not.
Well, and will she like come into your bed or come into your lap or into
Well,
your arms?
whenever, like, I mean, my apartment's empty just now, but whenever no one's here, then I let her out. She's in the cage through the back, a big, massive cage through the back, so she can run around and stuff. But I let her in here to run around and play with me. But then when anyone else comes, like when my wife comes back, I need to put her back in the cage because she would just attack her.
So when you take her out on expeditions, will she just like walk alongside you or walk with you and always know to come back to you? She would never like run away and scurry off into the wild.
No, mate, she's a lazy little shit. So I put her on top of my backpack and she just sits up there. And then sometimes she'll give like a kind of signal if she keeps going and like breathing heavy through her nose and then like pacing up and down in my bag. That lets me know that she needs a toilet. So I then put her down. I just literally put my hand out and she just walks down my arm and goes onto the ground. And then she just does the toilet. And then I'll let her like run around for a bit. I've got a couple of videos where she's just like walking behind me, but she's so slow. She's not like a dog where you can shout on it. She's not intelligent as a dog, but she's smart enough like a cat where she can use a cat litter tray kind of thing. But she's not as intelligent as a dog where you can be like, "Oh, come on, let's go." She's not going to follow you like that. So you just have to keep walking, and she will just follow you because she doesn't want to be too far away from you. But that's really it. But most of the time, I do have to pick her up and put her, on top of my shoulder and just bring her with me because she's so slow at walking.
And what about your relationship with your parrot? How did you? What made you think I'm going to get a bird and I'm
Aye.
going to domesticate it?
So you're not even allowed pets in these apartments. They're nice apartments, and sometimes you will go to an apartment block and they'll let you no pets allowed. Doesn't even matter if you own it, but we all just fucking chin them off, and we all have pets anyway. But one of my subscribers mailed me one time, and he was like, "Bang Ryan," but Bang just means bro, and everybody calls each other Bang over here. So he was like, "Bang Ryan." He was a parrot breeder. He's like, "You want a parrot? I have baby." And I was like, "Mate, I would love a parrot, but it's too noisy." And he's like, "No, no, this is a green cheek conure. This bird is like very well known for being one of the quietest pet birds you'll ever get." I was like, "No way, he's talking shit." So I googled it, and true enough, it says if you don't want a noisy bird, get a green cheek conure because they're not very noisy, they're not very vocal at all. And I got him, and he sent me a mate. He was only about 2 or 3 weeks old at the time. He's just this little pink blob with like tiny little feathers just starting to come out. And I just literally hand fed him like 5, 6 times a day. Because I sit here at the computer trading, I literally sat here like this with the towel here on my chest, and I just used to trade when he would just fall asleep in my hand. And because I just had him like 24 hours a day, basically, we as soon as he got feathers and was able to fly, I didn't even have to train him. We just had a brilliant bond, and every time I go somewhere, he's straight on my shoulder. Even this morning, you can probably see it. I'll show you it right now. We so every Sunday in Jakarta they have a thing called Car Free Day, where there's no cars allowed in the city, and thousands upon thousands of people go down to the city and run around. And you can see, look, this is me and my parrot today. Wait, I'll move that. That's been him. Look,
Oh my god.
aye,
For the listeners who are listening on audio
yeah.
only, this is a picture of Ryan in front of a bunch of skyscrapers with a pirate on his shoulder, like some sort of pirate.
And every time I'm running past people, they're like, "What? Ada burung, ada burung." It's like, "Hey, that guy's got a bird. That guy's got a bird." And everyone's so amazed that my bird doesn't fly away. It's such a brilliant pet.
Aye, why doesn't the bird fly away? Is it just so used to being in your
Just so
company, it
used.
just knows that you're its owner?
Yeah, mate, that's it. I mean, sometimes I do use a little lead, but that's only because what can happen with birds, even if they're as friendly as him and tame, uh, if you get one of these stupid, loud boy racer cars or boy racer motorbikes with that stupid exhaust flying by, it can make them scared and fly away in fear. And then they just fly away so far that they're scared. They're like, shit, they don't know how to come back. So sometimes if I'm going to an area where I know, right, this is a possibility, I'll just put the kind of the little lead thing on them. But he can actually still fly for like 2, 3 meters. It doesn't restrict them. It just means that you can't get lost kind of thing.
Mate, do you ever just pulse check on your life and recollect how absolutely ridiculous it is in comparison to growing up in a council
Oh,
estate in Cumbernauld? You have what is essentially the same as a badger or a family member to the badger and a parrot,
yep,
and you cut around one of the most exotic countries in the world,
yep.
doing these incredible expeditions that is it's bipolar to a life in Cumbernauld.
It is, mate. And the crazy thing is, 2 seconds. I'm going to put the battery back on my laptop. 2 seconds. Oh, sorry. So yeah, I mean, mate. Honestly, 8 years ago, I was fucking homeless. I had no money in the bank. When I got this job, my dad took me to the airport and he slipped 50 quid in my pocket. Look, there's 50 quid. See yourself out when you go over there. And I just look back at now and I just think, what the fuck? Like this is mad. I send my mum money monthly and stuff. I send her like a couple hundred quid and all that, so she doesn't have to worry about money. And I send my dad some money, and I just think like it's so different from when I first came over here, and I literally didn't have a pot to piss in. And now, if anybody's in the shit, I can help them out. I'm definitely grateful for it. Our gratitude is something that I just think is so underrated. If you're trying to get to 100 grand a year, for example, and you start off with nothing, you get to 25 grand a year, and you're pissed off that you're not at 100 grand a year, I don't think you're going to reach 100 grand a year, because whatever happened in the world for you to get to the 25 is like, well, if you're not happy that I got you at 25, you can fuck off at 100. So I just believe you have to be grateful all the way down the line, and kind of, maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but I've just personally found that when I make sure that I'm grateful for something, um, I seem to get more of it in abundance. I remember one time I was going on holiday to Bali so much at weekends because it's like 50 quid in a flight for us. Um, I literally said, "Oh, I'm fucking sick of going to Bali all the time," and I was ungrateful for going to Bali. And then COVID struck, and we couldn't go to Bali for 2 years, and I was fucking dying to go to Bali. Do you know what I mean? So I was just like, your word is your prayer," as my wife always says. Shut up.
The people over here in Scotland crave holidays to Bali. They fetishize them.
Yeah,
They love posting about them on Instagram and Facebook. Yeah,
yep.
that's like the equivalent of me going down to Prestwick Beach for you. Like you have to 50 quid
That is me.
return,
Yeah,
and you're in one of the most beautiful islands that
yep.
the world has ever produced.
Aye. It is a phenomenal place, and honestly, I've been to 67 countries so far in my life. I've met loads of beautiful, welcoming, kind people all over the world, but I can honestly say Indonesians take it to a whole new level. Like, you literally walk down the street here and you're just minding your own business, and people be like, "Hello, mister, apa kabar?" Like, "Hello, mister, how are you?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm fine, mate, thank you." "Okay, bye." Just random talking. You'll walk down from a mountain and you'll be like exhausted. You know, your sweat will be pissing off you, your t-shirt's going to be bogging, you look totally fucked, and that you'll be walking past this random little hut, you know, that where one of the villagers lives, and I'm like, "Hello, mister, my copy, copy, copy," and it means like copy means like come and sit with us and have coffee and drink, you know. So you'll sit there and have a share coffee and talk to them. Next minute, mate, they'll be bringing out bowls of rice, vegetables, salty fish, chicken, eggs. You're like, what the fuck? And then once you finish all that talking to them, you'll be getting ready to go away, and they'll be like, "Where are you going to stay tonight?" You're like, "Yeah, I'm just going to camp down at base camp." "No, no, girls, come and stay with us." And they're like, you're staying with this family in the home, and you're like, can you imagine walking down, you know, Renfrew Street and some random people like, "Hey, you hungry, mate? You want some fish and chips? Come on in, come on in." Fucking hell. Get yourself a seat. Where are you staying the night? Oh, fuck getting the bus back to Cumbernauld. Kip here, mate. I'll drive you home tomorrow. I mean, that's never going to happen, is it? The people here are just next level, man. They are really on next level. It's mental.
Because when you said when you told me that story about the Indonesians welcoming you, I thought, oh yeah, that's pretty nice. But then when you compare it to like my Saturday night down the town, yeah, that's so rare.
I know, mate. And everybody wants to help you.
I've,
One thing they do that drives you nuts is like, if you ask for directions here and they don't know, they'll tell you that they know. Like, you'll be like, "Hey, mate, do you know where the Hilton is?" Obviously, everybody knows where something like a Hilton is, you know? And they're like, "Yeah, mate, you just go straight down there, straight around, past the traffic lights, second on the left." And you're like, "Right, sound." You'll go there, mate, and it's a rice field. You're like, "Mate," you go back, you're like, "It's not there." "Oh, yeah, well, if it's not there, then I don't know." And you're like, "Oh, why didn't you say that?" How could you get confused with knowing where the Hilton is? You know? So people will always do that. They'll always tell you they know something. But now I know the body language. If they tell me, "Oh yeah, it's here," I'm like, "Yeah, he's full of shit." You know, now I know when they're talking shit.
I've seen you do a few TV commercials over in Indonesia. Are you
Yeah.
famous over there?
Well, I mean, I don't really class myself as famous, but my YouTube now is at like 715,000 subscribers. I'm sponsored by the North Face. I'm sponsored by Kawasaki. So with the Kawasaki stuff, I just really ride their motorbikes through the jungle to go and meet these kind of little local tribes, and that's obviously how the Kawasaki thing, because they don't just want it to be for motocross. They want to see, like, you can actually do this for, like, you know, the great outdoors adventure. um, Obviously, North Face give me all my gear and pay me and stuff. And yeah, so I go to big events. I go to, like, whenever there's like a massive, there's a huge festival. It's the largest outdoor festival in the world here. It's called Outdoor Fest. They have it once a year, and whenever they have that, of course, North Face have a big massive stall there, and then I get invited on stage to talk about my experiences and mountains and what's been the hardest. You know, how do we prevent ourselves from getting hypothermia, and you know, all this kind of stuff. Give hints and tips. So I guess you could say people know me in that sense. I'm married into actually a very famous Indonesian family. My sister-in-law is called Melanie Ricardo. She's kind of like our version of like Holly Willoughby, if that's how you want to look at it. My wife deals with all of my wife is the artist management agency, so she deals with all that. And my brother-in-law, my wife's brother, he's a famous rapper over here, Roy Ricardo. So it's like I'm in this really famous Indonesian family. Like, everywhere we go, if we just walk through the shopping centre, people are always like, Ba Melanie, mau photo, or Bang Roy, mau photo. And everybody wants photos of him and stuff. So, like, when we go to Bali, we get like crazy shit, mate. Not through me whatsoever, but through my sister in law. Like, where was it? I think it was the Ritz Carlton. So we've obviously got the Ritz Carlton hotel, right? Which the rooms are like £600 a night, and then they gave us like a 3 bedroom villa, which is part of their hotel, but you get like these separate big luxury villas. They gave us a villa which is 5.5 grand a night with a private butler and blah blah blah, like at your beck and call 24/7. They gave us that for a week, and all she like just so that she posted it to her social media, so we get like that really cool shit from it as well, which that's not from me, that's obviously from her.
That's insane. How did you meet your wife in that case? If you, how did you marry into an Indonesian famous family?
Aye, so Mate, I landed here on the 4th of December, and then on the 10th of December, excuse me, it was obviously the end of the work week, and I was just cutting about myself because there was nobody really an English speaker in the office, and I don't mind going out myself. So I just literally jumped in a taxi and I was like, drive, until I see something that I like. And we are driving around, and I found this bar called JJ Royal, and I just saw it because of the big lights, and I thought, oh, that looks nice. And stopped there, got in there, and there was my wife. She was with her best mate, who's a gay guy called Jimmy, and Jimmy was the boyfriend of the French ambassador over here. So I got talking to the French dude because he's the French ambassador, and I said, "Oh, where are you from?" And at that point, I was actually quite good at French. I was learning it in Iraq beforehand, so we were having a laugh about my Tarzan French, and then obviously because I was talking to him, we then got acquainted. Oh, this is my boyfriend. This is his best friend Nana, and that's how we met.
That's insane, mate.
Yeah,
And
nuts.
did she just take to you because of your Scottish accent?
No, I don't know what it was. I mean, we weren't serious for a long time. We were just dating and stuff. And then with my job here, I was like, I wasn't just here the whole time. So I was here for a couple of months, and then I was away working in Kuala Lumpur office for a couple of months. Then I was away working in Ho Chi Minh City for a couple of months. Then I was working in Manila for a couple of months, and then came back. So we actually stayed in touch. And then whenever I was in like, if I was in Malaysia for a while, she would just fly over because it's only about a 2 hour flight. She would fly over, spend the weekend with me, fly back. So she was brilliant. She was really great. And
Mate, what a life you've lived.
one time, this is a great story. And do you know what? Look, it was still at the point when I wasn't really making it. I wasn't a trader at this point. I was just doing the sales. And if you, by the way, and it was cutthroat sales. If you didn't get commissions, you basically didn't have any money. And when I was still struggling at this point, I came back to work at the office here, but they only supplied your accommodation, and they used to give you $200 a week to get you through for the first 2 months. After that, they never covered your accommodation. They never gave you money monthly. So I was on my arse at this point, right? I had done deals, but it takes a month for the commission to come through, and I was like, "Fuck!" So I literally had no money, no accommodation, nothing, and I was flying back from Manila. And this is how shit hot my wife is, mate. My wife knew I had nothing, right? Well, obviously my girlfriend at the time knew I had nothing. She paid my flight back from Manila to come here because the company wasn't going to pay it. She paid my flight back from Manila to come here. She had me picked up by a car and driver at the airport. The car and driver handed me an envelope of 2 million rupiah, which is about 150 quid. Inside there was a credit card, and she said, "Look, if you want food and drinks, just use the 2 million rupiah." There was a bank card inside. It was a family bank card. If you want food and drinks at a restaurant, use the bank card. If you want to, don't. She gave me a little access card for an apartment and a set of apartment keys, mate. She's like, "Look, my family own apartments everywhere. This one's empty, nobody in it. It's all fully kitted out. Just go and live there for now and get yourself on your feet and all that." And I was just like my wife is loaded, mate, and she met me when I had absolutely fuck all. And man, it nearly brings a tears, it nearly brings a tear to my eye thinking about this because it's so raw. And I just remember thinking, "Fuck me," and I remember this, mate, when I had nothing. Sorry, and sorry. And I remember saying, "Man, if I make it big here, like I'm fucking, my wife is gonna get everything from me, man."
I love that, man.
Aye.
I love that. And look at the life you live now together. And the platform that you've built and the trading knowledge and the trading profile that you've created.
Yeah,
And now you're in a place that like you match that level of generosity. That's just amazing, man. That's so warm to hear. Two people who are so radically different in terms of background as
yeah,
well. You at a poor council scheme,
yeah.
Scotsman in a place that she's never even heard of,
Aye,
and then this kind of well-to-do Asian woman, and she's just put her hand out and helped you.
I know, mate.
And
I mean,
look at you now,
she comes from
married
my
with
life.
amazing
Sorry,
bits.
sorry. She comes from a life. Sorry, it's a crossover there. She comes from a life where like they've got cars, drivers, they've got maids. Like they literally do nothing, And she made, and at the same time, she was like when we were kind of dating and we weren't quite solid. Before that happened, she was dating a guy who was like the regional manager for Porsche of Asia. So she was dating a guy who was making like 20, 30 grand a month, and then she was with me who was making absolutely fuck all. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's totally crazy, man. And the two of us are like peas in a pod. We've been together, well, you could say 8 years now if you want to count it from when we first met. um, we've been married 5 years now, and honest to God, mate, like we sit down sometimes and we're like, when was the last time we argued? We cannot remember when we've had an argument. And I know people are like, oh, it's not healthy if you don't argue. And I would just say, shut up to that, man. Me and my wife don't argue, and our relationship is fucking brilliant. We can have a laugh about anything. You know what I mean? Like my wife is just so bang on. It's amazing.
Man, I've been really proud to get to know you over the last 2 hours, man. What an absolute story. Before I go, I'm going to quickly say, does your wife have a younger sister? I'm
I
only
know.
joking.
An older sister. That's it.
Jokes aside, mate, this has been amazing. Honestly, I'm really, really proud to unpick your story. Um, how I describe what I want to get out of this podcast, episode on episode, is to
Mhm.
show distance traveled. And not only have you shared distance traveled metaphorically in
Mhm.
terms of where you started and where you are now financially, and in terms of your purpose and life mission, but also
Yeah.
geographically. Like, this is the first time I've ever uh yeah, had an Indonesian based creator on my podcast. So
Aye.
yeah, mate, thank you for bringing that to life, mate. What's next for you?
Good question, mate. I think I'm just going to keep, pounding out the content. I've decided to go more. I previously was like in a mountain vlog, and I'm still going to keep doing that, but I'm going to change it a little bit more documentary with more voiceover as opposed to more vlogging style because I believe I can get a better I can create a better content that way. That's pretty much it. I'm just going to continue. I have my own trading platform called the Trading Guys, where I teach people, myself, my business partner Lee, teach people how to trade. We've got millions of educational videos. On top of that, we actually give the mentorship for trading, and that's important. So I've get people to contact me and they're like, "Mate, I've been watching trading videos for 4 years and I just don't get it." And it's like, you need the mentorship. If you go to medical school to be a heart surgeon for 5, 6 years, whatever it is, and you just go to university every day and you're reading medical books, but there's no professor or lecturer there to actually guide you. You don't get hands on where you're cutting open a frog and then you're seeing a dead body and dissecting it. If you don't get that, you're never going to be a surgeon just because you've read the books for 5 years. And it's exactly the same trading. If you don't have a mentor to actually go over it with you, be like, no, you need to hold off here. Sometimes when we enter a trade, we'll enter a trade and it will instantly start going against us. And I'll say, right, guys, stop. Right now, emotionally, this is how you're going to feel. You're going to be thinking, fuck me, you're going to be panicking that your account's down £300. Don't panic. This is not a reversal. It's just simply the market pulling back. So just let it go, blah, blah. And I talk them through it because I trade live so they can see what I'm doing and they can copy my exact trade at the same time that I take it. So, I mean, that kind of mentorship is really invaluable. So I'm just going to continue with that. We're going to grow it. We've now opened up to funded accounts. So if maybe someone's only got £1,000, like me, I don't have a lot of money, I've only got £1,000. Well, my company now does funded challenges where you can buy a challenge. If you pass the challenge, which simply proves that you actually can trade, you know how to trade, then you can get like a 50 grand account, 100 grand account, and blah, blah, blah. And then we teach them how to trade that and make money from that as well. We're using the company's funds. So they'll maybe get like 75% of the commission each month, and the company takes 25, but at least they're getting a 100 grand account to trade as opposed to a $1,000 account. And even if they're not that sure on how to trade, they just simply copy my trades. And, I've got loads of mates who are ex-army who have jumped in with me now, and they're like, "Mate, another 2, 3 months of this. Once I feel confident, like I'm done." They're making like 700, £800 a day just copying my trades, and they're like, "Mate, this is." They were like, "I cannot fucking believe I'm going to work to make this. I make this in 2 weeks, and I fucking made it this morning before I've went to work. They just can't believe it. So for me, I'm genuinely happy that I'm able to give back for that because it's not about I want to see everyone rich. I want to see everyone out of this matrix of thinking that you have to work, and at the end of it, you get your state pension, which is shit, and all this. I just don't want people to feel that they have to worry about bills anymore because I've been there when you can't pay your bills. I know how fucking horrible it is, and it's even more horrible. Not, I mean, when I didn't have a job and couldn't pay my bills, that was horrible. But what's even worse is when maybe there's two, the mum and the dad are working in a family, and you're still struggling to pay your bills. There's nothing fucking worse than that, mate. And I'm not pointing my fingers at anybody. I'm saying that because I've been there and I know how shit that feels. And to have a way now where I don't worry about bills, I don't worry about going on holidays, I don't worry about cars, like, petrol, food. And I mean that in a nice way. I'm like, fuck, I want everyone to experience this. And if I can now help people via trading, at least, even if they only make another 500 quid a month and that's going to help them, then, happy fucking days.
That's amazing, man. That is amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And if anyone wants to get in touch, where can they find you if they want on board?
Yeah, so my I'm on Facebook as Ryan Mack. I also have Bule Bolang. So Bule, I'm on Instagram as well. Bule Bule underscore Bolang, which is Bolang. My YouTube is the same, and obviously, if you want to get in touch with the trading guys, it's www.thetradingguys.com.
This has been a lot of fun, mate. Thank you for jumping on for over 2 hours and sharing your story.
Thanks a lot for the invite, David. Speak to you soon, mate. Cheers.